Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning Public Hearing for Tuesday, July 26, 2022. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. If the secretary could please read the public notice.
So this is, whoops, got the wrong piece of paper. Do you have it? Okay, thanks. Got my papers out of order here. To be published in the Journal Enquirer Friday, July 15th and Thursday, July 21, 2022. South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, July 26th at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number one, application 22-20P, the Golden Lampstand T&C, which stands for Temporary and Conditional, request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit to establish a small parking lot with gazebo for periodic church gatherings on property located at 401 King Street, RR Zone. Number two, application 22-25P, Miracle World Outreach Ministries temporary and conditional permit, request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit, section 2.13A, to allow a church use with limited hours on property located at 400 Chapel Road, Unit 2A, I Zone. Number three, application 22-21P, Leonard zoning text amendment, request to modify section 6.4.2B, minimum required parking space with a breakdown for different restaurant types, and add to section 10.3 definitions to add restaurant, fast food, small, and shopping centers. Number four, application 22-24P, Drake Motor Partners, LLC, Buckland Road Gateway Zone text amendments. Add to the permitted uses, section 4.2.5F, to allow for the sale of new and pre-owned automobiles, including surfacing. Modify prohibited uses, section 4.2.61, to allow for the sales and services of new and used vehicles that are electric. And add to site appearance requirements, section 4.2.9.1, to allow display of up to 50% of the site for new/used vehicles. Copy of the application are on file in the Office of Town Clerk and/or Planning Department and online at https://southwindsor.ct.gov/planning-department/pages/planning and zoning commission applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Bart Pasiconis, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much. Our first thing, we have one of our commissioners out tonight. So I'm going to seat Commissioner Carey for Commissioner Viteri. Okay. If anyone has a cell phone, if they could please put it to vibrate or silent, we would appreciate it. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from the applicants, then we will hear from town staff, then we will hear from members of the public, first those in favor, and then those against or having questions or concerns, and then we will hear from commissioners. When coming up, there is a sheet on the podium to sign in. If you're speaking tonight, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and sign in either before or after you get done speaking. When speaking into the microphone, it's best to have your voice or your mouth 3 to 6 inches. So this is a little close, and this is probably a little far. I hope everybody hears the difference. So we all want to be able to hear what you say, and the acoustics with these shields can be a little difficult at times. So if I remind you, please understand. So at this time, I will call our first applicant, which is application 22-20P, the Golden Lampstand Temporary and Conditional. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Passaconis, Vice Chairman Foley, members of the Commission. For your record, Peter DeMalley, President of Design Professionals Offices right here in Bucolic, South Windsor, 21 Jeffrey Drive. And I'm proud to be here before you representing the Golden Lampstand Association US Inc. Out of Vernon, Connecticut. They were established in 2015, and it is a Christian church. They presently have 8 congregations, Chinese congregations, Christian congregations throughout Connecticut, in Bloomfield, Cheshire, Wilton, Danbury, Norwich, Storrs, and 2 in New Haven. So they have 8 congregations. If all goes well after tonight, this is just an initial temporary and conditional permit they want, but if all goes well over time, their 9th congregation will be here, church here in South Windsor. But they are an active Christian organization. The closest church right now is on Wittenberry Avenue to us, is on Wittenberry Avenue in Bloomfield. With me tonight are 2 representatives from the Golden Lampstand, Reverend Dr. Abraham Chan, who is the founder of the organization, and also to his left, your right, is Estella Cha, and she is she's the executive director of Golden Lampstand, so for the whole statewide association. In late 2021, I think it was in December, the Golden Lampstand Associate acquired a 9-acre parcel, a tract at 401 King Street from the Chinese Baptist Church of Greater Hartford. They had gone through the commission at some point, some time ago, and they acquired that parcel. The Chinese Baptist Church did not pursue their endeavor, so it was acquired by Golden Lampstand in December. So that parcel is behind you. I just have an exhibit just showing the general area orthophoto, but it is just the area. East Hartford Town Line is on the bottom. The property abuts that. It's on the northwest corner of Burnham Street and King Street. So it's just the East Hartford Town Line. To the west is the Burnham Brook and farmland. To the north is an 11-acre parcel owned by the town of South Windsor as open space. I don't know, are they doing anything with that? No, nothing. Which is woods and a big pond. And by the way, incidentally, Burnham Brook goes through a corner of the property, at the southwest corner. And on the east side of it is King Street itself. So we're here tonight because the Golden Lampstand Association would like to have small periodic gatherings at this property that they acquired last year. They also have engaged a team of design consultants to help them as they're doing schematic plans, pursuing their vision for eventual development of the site for a ministry center containing a sanctuary for worship services in a larger building, which will also have meeting and instructional space, offices, kitchen, and the like. They'll also have on this campus, they're envisioning a parsonage for Reverend Abraham, and also accommodations for some visiting clergy, missionary programs for adults and youth, and also some housing for church members, limited number, and which will require us to do in the future a text amendment working with the town planner and with the commission. This will function as a statewide center for the 9 congregations in Connecticut. There'll be 8 that are existing, plus a new one in South Windsor. Our temporary, let me see if I can get this going here. Yeah, up arrow, here we go. Okay, we presented to you, and you have 2 in your package. There's original concept plan. Michelle called me up the other day and indicated if we could give a little bit more detail, so we submitted that tonight. And I will go over that in a moment. So we, in fact, why don't I just get into that right now? We have up on the screen and in front of you the latest concept layout which shows an entrance drive off King Street. There's a utility pole we're avoiding. There's also a large maple tree we're avoiding, and we're trying to take advantage of the grades so we don't have a steep slope driveway. So we're proposing a 24-foot wide gravel driveway going into an existing asphalt area, which is in pretty poor shape. It was a floor of an old farm building, and that'll be replaced with gravel, just consistent with the driveway. We're also going to have 9 parking spaces that are conventional, all gravel, and then 1 paved parking space that'll be roughly 16 feet wide by 18 feet, and that will be for handicap parking spaces. And as you know, under the code, ADA, it must be paved. We're talking about a 10 by 13, approximately 10 by 13 gazebo. People would be in there for their gatherings, and outside also a 10 by 10 storage building. So we're talking about very small activities in buildings at this time. And this is just for periodic gatherings until the ministry village vision that they're working with consultants, including DPI, is complete. Incidentally, those consultants that are involved with, we're doing land planning, civil engineering, landscape architecture, and land surveying. Also, Krosky Associates out of Hartford is involved, and Masters Corporation is a construction consultant at this time. So once that conceptual design is complete, then we'll come back to you, the commission, for a zoning text amendment to identify any areas that aren't covered under house of worship into your regulations, religious institution, such as residential besides just the parsonage. We'll have some small residential component. We need to talk to you about that before you can allow us to apply for that. So we'll come back in and work with Michelle on that as the schematic plans evolve. And then eventually, if you approve the text amendment, then we'll go to site plan application. The total amount of disturbed areas, we estimate about 15,000 square feet to do what they want to do under a temporary and conditional permit, this 2-year temporary and conditional permit. So that's roughly 1/3 of an acre. And everything that's disturbed will be loamed and seeded in that area. And we have on that plan, we gave you what the seed mix is that our staff are proposing. So that summarizes what they're doing. Again, so just, they have, Golden Lampstand is a Chinese Christian religious organization, a church. They have 8 congregations statewide right now. I mentioned where they were, all over the state. They would like to do another one in South Windsor, but this would be their center for all 9 congregations, where they can have meetings, instructional items, worship, and youth and adult instructional activities and the like. Also, they want to have it so that if they have retired clergy or missionaries who are working overseas and domestically, they can come by to this facility and be housed temporarily. And also, they want to have some housing that's longer term on it. We're not talking about large volume of housing. We're talking about a relatively modest number. Of people associated with either clergy, missionaries, or members of the Golden Lampstand Association. So we'll return to you for that. But right now, they just want to be able to have a gazebo, a little shed, storage shed, parking for 10 vehicles. Will be gravel other than the handicapped space. And for periodic gatherings, just get started. They've got a long way to go before they are ready to finalize design and go to construction, but they're committed to doing it. So we're available for any questions you may have. And leave it at that. That concludes our formal presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. This is a request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for the Golden Lampstand Association for access drive, parking lot to accommodate 9 cars, a gazebo, shed, portable toilet on property located at 401 King Street in the rural residential zone. The property is currently vacant. Some commissioners may recall the Chinese Baptist Church was in about 2006 and had an approval on this location that was never gone anywhere. So it's sat vacant since that time. The wording of our temporary conditional permit regulation is that temporary and conditional permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after a public hearing if, in the judgment of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and traffic and other hazards will not result from such use. We do have a plan. The original plan you saw just kind of showed the elements, and we asked the design professionals to add the grading onto it. So the plan in front of you tonight does accommodate the driveway grades. We did have a little bit of concern of the steepness of the grade. I think it's been accommodated with this plan in front of you. As indicated by the applicant, this is for small periodic gatherings. This isn't a regular weekly event that will be going on at this location. If this is granted, the commission approves this application, it will be subject to building code and taking out the appropriate permits and any health related to the sanitary aspects of it. Town engineer is not here tonight, but he did give me a couple comments. I think they've been addressed on the plans in front of us, but we were looking for the limit of clearing, including removal of any significant trees to be shown on the plan, particularly if there's any trees in the town right away. We want to make sure we're aware of that. The design of the driveway cannot be steeper than 15%. We suggest it to be 10%. I think Mr. DeMaili indicated it's about a 7% grade, so we're satisfied with that. And they're showing some spot grades along the driveway. And then any areas that are disturbed shall be graded and reseeded. That's staff comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will turn to members of the public. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, I will turn to commissioners. Commissioner Quarishi.
I have one question around the parking. Is it supposed to be lighted?
We're not proposing to have it lighted at this time. It's just daytime activities as of right now.
Okay. That's it. Nothing else.
Okay. Commissioner Cavagnero?
Thank you. Also, in terms of the parking, will there be any type of security or monitoring of this gravel parking lot, or no?
We weren't anticipating that, any need for that. I suppose we could consider maybe blocking off the entrance drive at some point, maybe a chain or something of that nature. Good idea, though, yeah.
All right, thank you.
People go in there already, though. ATVs and stuff go in there. And maybe it'll discourage them, who knows?
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner LeBlanc?
I have no comments or questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Foley?
No comments.
Commissioner Wagner?
First of all, I'm very convinced that this is intended to be temporary, but for purposes of understanding what's happening to the land, I'd like either you or Mrs. Leip to comment on, if this came in as a site plan, and I know it's not intended to be a site plan, what would the issues be?
Well, first of all, you need a special exception use for a church use, so it would be a special exception use and a site plan. You would need a primary structure for a church, right, to hold gatherings in. So it doesn't meet all the elements of a site, a typical site plan. You don't have a primary use, you're only using accessory uses here.
So if we look at like the driveway location, the grading of the land, parking, how does this differ from what we would be able to,
Well, with a temporary conditional permit, typically we wouldn't look for this level of detail. I think the concern we had was because there are grades out there and the driveway was just kind of shown. So we asked for more detail. With temporary and conditional permits, sometimes you don't need that level of detail, but it just so happened with this one. And there's a driveway to a daycare right across the street. If anybody's familiar with the area, knowing where those line up, I think is important too, because this probably will be their permanent driveway.
I'm not trying to turn it into a regular
No, I get
site
it,
plan,
yeah.
but I'm just asking,
The different
if
elements.
we
of
look at this design, because it could go on for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, before they're able to build their ministry. Does this function as, from the outside, does this function as well as a site plan for the same thing would function?
May I address that? Yeah, when and if, of course, the expectation is when we come in with an application, we'll have gone through a big exercise with the congregations involved and all that to come up with a design for the ministry center. It will have a normal driveway, probably not in that exact location, It'll have regular buildings, permanent buildings, and it'll probably be connected to sewer and
Excuse me
water.
for interrupting. I'm not talking about the eventual, I'm talking about this plan here,
So I think, Commissioner Wagner, in 2 years, if this were to come in for renewal, I think that would be the opportunity to review whether the site is operated properly or not. Let's just say 9 parking spaces are not adequate. All of a sudden, you need 20 more. So I think you'll have an opportunity in 2 years to evaluate what's gone on and whether or not it's still
Are we
able-
comfortable with the driveway setup, for example?
Jeff Doolittle and I looked at it, and we actually pulled out this grades to look at it ahead of time and knew it could be accomplished. He hasn't reviewed this yet, he's on vacation, but I'm pretty confident that he'll be comfortable with what we're seeing here.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dexter,
No comments.
Commissioner Carey.
No comments.
Okay, and I really have no comments. So, commissioners, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? Staff? Applicant?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, then we will close the public hearing at 7:22 PM. And it is on our agenda to act on later tonight. Okay, our next application is application 22-25P, Miracle World Outreach Ministries, temporary and conditional permit.
Hi, I'm William Mitchell. Here goes the pen. From 70 Brookfield Street, South Windsor, and I purchased Unit 2A down at Bissell Commons, and we're looking for a 2-year permit to have a church in half of the 2A. There's 6,000 feet in the 2A, and the pastor is going to rent 3,000, and this is the pastor of the church.
Okay. Will he be speaking also, or if you could introduce yourself to us?
Yes. Good evening. I'm Dr. Patrick A. Ritchie, and I'm the pastor of the Miracle World Outreach Ministries.
Okay. Could you repeat your name one time for me?
Patrick A. Ritchie, Ritchie.
Awesome.
Rich.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So the Miracle World Outreach Ministry has been here in the States for 22 years. Our headquarter office is in New Jersey, the New Jersey area. So we have decided to come now in the South Windsor area. Our ministry, presently we have 9 members and 6 children. We are catering in the area of doing a lot of counseling in different aspects. We also doing areas like, for example, reaching single mothers who may be going through difficulties. And we do pantry ministries like on a Saturday, where person who are in need of meals and stuff, we will assist them in giving them stuff. Presently, we meet like on a Sunday morning from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. And on a Tuesday evening, we are there like presently now, like from 6 to 7:30, where we do a small Bible study for about 8 persons.
Okay. Does that complete your presentation?
Oh, so yeah, so what are we trying to do is we are requesting permission so that we can have more, the facility to use as we try to reach the people within the community to let them know what we're there doing and how much we can help them in the area of counseling, whatever aspect they need help in. So that's what we are requesting, permission.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. This is a request for a 2-year and temporary conditional permit for Miracle World Outreach Ministries to hold church services on property located at 400 Chapel Road in the industrial zone. There's currently 3 buildings on site with a total of 35 individual condo units. The applicant's proposing to occupy a portion of Unit 2A, from what I hear tonight, about 3,000 square feet. The wording of a temporary conditional permit regulation is that temporary conditional permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after a public hearing if, in the judgment of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served, and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and traffic and other hazards will not create from such use. The current approximate size of the congregation is about 15 individuals, with the hope of growing up to about 50 members. The applicant has provided a site layout. I think you have that in front of you tonight. They have 3 spaces that are dedicated specifically to ministry employees. We did get a letter from the Bissell Commons Association authorizing the use of the parking spaces off hours and on weekends for the church use, which is something that, we as staff had concerns about this use going in this location. So you do have that as part of your record. The church would conduct services, and I think these are kind of the outside hours, a little bit more than was mentioned at the hearing. Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 to 8, Sundays from 9:30 to 11:30, Sunday evenings 6 to 8, and Saturdays are scheduled for special events. All weekday services would take place after close of business hours, and there would be no funeral services conducted due to parking constraints at the site. The fire marshal and building department have both been contacted about the applicable codes that would be required for this assembly use. The fire marshal has indicated that the unit occupant load would be limited to 49 people and would be posted as such. Any approval granted by this commission would recommend an approval condition be subject to building and fire codes. If this application is approved, there are no other planning modifications requested, and there are no engineering comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Carey.
No questions.
Commissioner Dexter.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Wagner.
No questions.
Commissioner Foley.
No comment.
Commissioner LeBlanc.
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Cavagnaro.
No comment.
Commissioner Quarishi.
No comments.
Okay, and it's to me. I just want to know, is the parking lot lit as there are going to be some evening activities?
Yes, some Sunday evening, we may have some activities, and there's light on the facility.
Okay, great. You're saying you're having up to possible 50 members. That could possibly be a lot of activity there. It sounds like the bathroom facilities definitely
Yes,
adequate for?
Yes, the inspector came and he checked it and says, okay.
Okay, awesome. Okay, houses of worship make good neighbors, so I believe that's all I have. Oh, one more thing, just do you know what type of special events might be planned for Saturdays?
Oh, on a Saturday, we may have for example, giving out food stuff. Like if someone in need of food stuff, we may have that on a Saturday.
Okay. And do you envision them being like all-day events, or is it?
More in the early part of the morning.
Okay, all right. That completes my questions. Commissioners, is there any reason to keep this public hearing open? Town staff? Applicant, you've said everything you're gonna say? Okay. You're welcome. Thank you. We'll close this public hearing at 7:30 p.m., and this is on our agenda to act on later tonight. Our next item on our agenda is application 22-21P, Leonard zoning text amendment. Do we have someone here to represent the applicant?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, Peter and Malley, Design Professionals, again. With me this evening is Scott Leonard in the back row, who's the applicant, also owns One Buckland Center, and also opposite Geisler's Plaza, he owns the plaza up there with the, what's now Berkshire Bank, and Boutique Salon, and the Subway. So, hold here with me 1 minute. I'd like to first just distribute to you what we presented, and I know Michelle has presented to you a summary document marked up the schedule for parking, I believe. Yeah. So I'd like to just give you what I gave you in February and I reviewed, which was a memo from us, our study, as well as Scott Leonard, Fenwick Consulting study. So just so you have it in front of you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go through everything I went over in February, because at that point, everybody said, why don't you go work with Michelle, and we'll come up with zoning text amendment. So we did that. And we're covering a couple of extra bases. We're covering a couple of extra bases with this zoning text amendment, and I'll go through it right now. We're trying to identify a definition of a small fast food restaurant that would be acceptable to the commission, which do not require all the parking of a normal restaurant. And while we're going through that exercise, Michelle and I, we also looked at regulations in a whole bunch of other suburban communities around the Hartford area. And we found out that the parking requirements for restaurants vary substantially, but for the most part, I think virtually all of them were at a lower requirement for parking than what we have for restaurants here in town or for quick service restaurants, fast food restaurants. Virtually all of them were that way. So that's what we came up with a recommendation. While we're taking care of the restaurant fast food small ones, we decided to take a look at the regulations and make a recommendation to you with respect to required parking spaces for fast food restaurants and also for regular restaurants and cocktail lounges. And we also came up with not only a definition for fast food restaurant, the small restaurant, but also a definition for shopping center that you do not have embodied within your regulations, and we thought it was a good idea to come up with one. We have one, and for your consideration. So let me first start with the definitions, which is the bottom of the sheet that we submitted. I'm going to go to the definitions first. First thing, we tried to define the small fast food restaurant, a fast food restaurant in a shopping center that meets the following criteria. So it has to be in a shopping center. And if you look down below, let's just jump down to the bottom. A shopping center is defined as one or more buildings integrated architecturally with a minimum of 15,000 square feet of gross floor area, containing 3 or more businesses primarily devoted to retail, dining, and service establishments, which use parking and other facilities in common. And we came up with that after looking at shopping center definitions all over the map, many different suburban communities. And so we came up with that. And then we go to the definition for the new definition for fast food restaurant, a small fast food restaurant. As we said, it's got to be in a shopping center that meets the following criteria, and there are 5 of them. First one, A, is gross floor area is 1,600 square feet or less, which represents no more than 1/5 or 20% of the gross floor area of the shopping center. So we want to be a small part of the shopping center. Second thing is seating capacity is 16 seats or less. So the maximum 16. Third item, item C, is food and beverages served on the premises are actually or expected to be consumed primarily off the premises. So people aren't sitting down and dining for hours, that type of thing, unlike a normal fine food restaurant where you have wait staff and that type of thing. People come in, they often get it on an app, it's ready for them, and they take off. No drive-through service would be allowed. That would require, we think, more parking. a McDonald's or something of that nature. And then also, it shall be in a building containing multiple tenant spaces. So that's the definition we came up with, so that there would be a requirement for very minimal parking to serve this establishment for employees and for customers. The customers, it's a fast service thing. They come in, they pick up their item, and they go, for the most part. We heard testimony or a letter to the effect of about 10% of the people now are actually staying and eating their meal there, about 10%, which has changed dramatically. And most people are ordering online through an app, that type of thing. So it's ready for them. So if we go back up to the top, as I said, we first cover the definitions at the bottom part, Article 10. Again, that new section 10.3 for restaurant, fast food, small, and then also for shopping center, both of which are not in your regulations today. Then we go up to Article 6, site development regulations and minimum required parking spaces, which is your table 6.4.3 uppercase B for commercial industrial uses. And we're proposing minimum required parking spaces for this small fast food restaurant would be one space for 200 square feet of gross floor area, which is 5 per thousand. Which is what we have for requirements for One Buckland Center, Mr. Leonard's facility. Also, we looked at just fast food restaurants, not what we're talking about major tonight, but Michelle and I thought we'd adjust that. We're suggesting an incremental step in that, considering what other communities are doing, and the requirement seems extremely excessive at one space for every 50 square feet of gross floor area, which is 20 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So we're suggesting that you might want to consider one space for every 75 square feet of gross floor area for both fast food restaurants and for conventional restaurants, taverns, and the like. So we thought that was good. And if you go to 75 square feet of gross floor area for both of those uses, it would be the equivalent of 13 spaces per 1,000 square feet, going from 20 to 13, as opposed to a more radical change consistent with what most of the other communities in the Hartford area have. So let's do an incremental step, see how it goes, and then perhaps in the future, commission and staff could consider another incremental change. You find out that this is working out well, and it's excessive. If you conclude that, you might want to make another change, but we'll just do a small incremental change at this point. That's our recommendation. So to summarize, we've got definitions for small fast food restaurant, which is not in the regulations today. Michelle and I worked out this language, and then we go for new shopping center definition because you never had it. And then we're suggesting minimum parking spaces for the small fast food restaurant at one space for 200 square feet, which is 5 per thousand. And then for fast food and regular restaurants, taverns and the like, one space for every 75 square feet of gross floor area, which is an increase, a decrease from one for every 50 square feet of gross floor area that you have right now. So I'm not, if you'd like me to, I can get into what we went over in February, but I don't think we need, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman is saying, not a good idea. So brevity's a word. So I think I'll conclude with that, and we're hopeful that you'll consider what we worked out with the Director of Planning.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request for zoning text amendments to modify section 6.42B, minimum required parking spaces, with a breakdown of different restaurant types, and add to section 10.3 definitions of small fast food restaurant and defined shopping centers. I won't belabor what Peter just went through, all the details, but I do concur that incrementally changing our parking requirements for restaurants to 1 per 75 square feet seems like a logical first step. We did find that many communities require less parking than that with their restaurants. Also, the small food restaurant idea that for the subway, looking at that, I think that will work. I think the parameters put around it, I know when we talked about it back in February, March timeframe, Commissioner Wagner, for example, was concerned about the size of facility and those kinds of things. So I think by narrowing it down to 1,600 square feet, making 1/5 of a plaza really helps narrow down the number of these that we may see show up. Also, the fire marshal and health department did indicate that 16 patrons sitting inside would be the maximum that they would want as an occupancy for tables. So I think that 16 works well. Other than that, we did notify CROG as required, and I do have a report from June 10th saying the staff of the Regional Planning Commission of the Capital Region Council of Governments has reviewed the zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. And I would just refer your business development section of the town plan of conservation development has one of its goals to attract additional business development that's consistent with the character and scale of its surroundings, with a strategy to maintain current business zones with updates. And I would consider this an appropriate update related to restaurants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will turn to the public. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak against or have questions or comments? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Quarishi.
No comments.
Commissioner Cavagnaro.
No comment.
Commissioner LeBlanc.
No real comment, but I do agree with a lot of this. That sort of makes sense to me. Some of these parking lots are excessive, but keep in mind that you may take away from business in some cases if the ratio isn't correct. I ran into this in a design project years ago in the Darien Service Plaza out by 95. The consensus was to build a larger building with multiple tenants and limit the parking spaces. And what happened out there is that the parking lot is often full and cars turn away, and some of these tenants aren't getting the revenue they thought they would because of limited access parking, and it turned the whole business idea around. So just something to keep in mind. Sometimes you take away too much and it takes away from what you're trying to do as a business. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Foley.
No comment.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I'm trying to visualize one of these restaurants in terms of what's actually out there. So can you identify any restaurants that would fit within this definition, either in South Windsor or maybe in neighboring communities?
We deliberately didn't say a particular brand, but in our study, we only looked at, the initial study that Fenwood looked at was only Subway restaurants. That was the idea that we were looking behind, something like that. A lot of these other restaurants that even make submarine-type sandwiches, heroes, what have you, they have more employees. So we want to have small employment staff, like a Subway, but only, but we looked at it from perspective of why the one on Sullivan Avenue does so well, because there's no competition down there to speak of, quick service type restaurants and not much else right around there, as opposed to where we're thinking of for Scott Leonard and these other facilities we looked at. They were surrounded by a lot of competition, and therefore they wouldn't get the same kind of traffic because of that. And we documented that, and we documented how many parking spaces they need. They were inventoried, observed, and we're very confident that we'll have more than ample parking with this. But we didn't want to specify a particular brand, but we wanted to make it so tight that something, a Subway or something just like it would be the only one that would qualify.
So the example that comes to my mind is actually just over the line in Manchester on Deming Street. It's the Polkadon restaurant. You go in there, you order a bowl of Oriental food, relatively few tables. I don't know if you're familiar with that restaurant, but it's right next to the Panera Bread.
Okay.
So to me, the Panera Bread would not fall in this. But the question is, do you think the Polkadon next to it would fall within this?
Well, they're cooking,
Yep.
and the type of restaurants we're describing, like what we described in February, they really don't, they heat, they don't really cook and stuff. But that kind of restaurant, if it's very limited seating, if it's if very small in nature, it is part of shopping. Of course, that's over the line in Manchester, that shopping center there. But if it's part of a shopping center, it's minimum 15,000 square feet, so you have a number of other uses, so you can spread it out. It might just qualify for something like that. But I would think that if they have very limited seating, that means almost all of it is takeout, and people are taking it away and consuming it somewhere else. So that could potentially qualify as well.
So, the choice of the the 2 square feet here, the 1,600 square feet and the 15,000, 1,600 or less, I mean, how does that compare to a typical business in any of the shopping centers we have?
Well, we,
The reason I'm asking is I'm thinking that, you know, they might be selling cell phones this year, and then next year they want to be a restaurant, one of these small, and they would fit into that same slot. So is this a typical size of a business in a shopping center?
it's existing space that Mr. Leonard's is less than that, the space he's trying to fill. It's not unusual, that size for a shopping center. The other subways we looked at were comparable in size.
But, you know, if it were to go to a different use, the use it would go to would require less parking. A retail use doesn't require as much parking as a restaurant does.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
So a restaurant use requires more parking than a retail. So if someone were to leave and a retail use were to go in there, the parking that he's proposing is the same that a retail would be required, the 5 per thousand.
Okay, but I'm asking about the 1,600 square feet. I mean, I want to make sure we're thinking about other businesses besides Subway going in, okay? And if that's a typical business in one of these shopping centers, then I'm happy with that number.
Yeah, well, there are a number throughout the area. There are a number of small businesses, small store spaces. They're, 15, 20 feet in width.
Yeah.
They're usually not that deep because they want to have, retail doesn't want to have a depth to it, narrow bowling alley effect. So you can't go more than 60 or 80 feet typically deep. So it's going to be that type of thing, and the storefronts are 15, 20 feet in width, somewhere in that range. So you're going to get a relatively small space anyways, and they have that. What they often do is they create it for smaller spaces, but they aggregate it for the larger tenants.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we can go back down to that, but that's pretty typical for the smaller tenants, whether they're garments or other uses such as a small restaurant.
So now I have a kind of a math question here. When you go back up to the required parking for any restaurants or shopping centers, I think we ought to make sure that it's clear that, I don't know, you have businesses in a shopping center that are not restaurants and they have certain parking requirements. You have businesses in a shopping center that are restaurants that have these requirements, that we don't have to add 200 square feet to what's required for the shopping center. So maybe the wording ought to be that the calculation of the parking requirements is done separately for the non-restaurants and the restaurants and added together.
Well, you have two things here that we considered. One is that we're talking about in shopping centers with multiple occupants, that type of thing. When you get into a larger retail shopping center, I think that changes, doesn't it? It reduces it to 4.
Yeah, the
4 per
larger.
1,000, you can qualify for that for a large shopping center.
5 to 1,000, 5 per
Yeah.
thousand. It starts at 4 per thousand if you're less
Over
than
a certain-
200,000 square
Yeah,
feet, and
if
5
you're really
over.
big.
Yeah.
But we're
I'm just saying that we got a certain number of businesses that are not restaurants and they have a certain number of square feet and that leads to a certain amount of parking.
Right.
And add to that the parking for the restaurant. Now, the parking isn't separated out, it's all joined together, but the total parking ought to be A, what you need for the restaurant, and B, what you need for everybody else added together, rather than adding the parking for the restaurant on top of what you already require for the rest of the shopping center. It's a technicality that I think maybe we ought to be sure is clear in whatever regulations we write. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dexter,
No comments.
Commissioner Carey,
I apologize. How many parking spaces are you recommending for the subway?
Well, for a size at the maximum size, under 1,600 square feet, you're talking about 5 per 1,000, so it'd be about 8 parking spaces, which is the same thing you'd require for retail and other types of uses that would go in a shopping center.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, with the example you just used for 8 parking places, that's per square footage. I see in our regulations and some, we have, like, another option, like for financial, it's, so many, spaces per square foot plus one per employee. Now, when you're talking 8 parking places, and if you have 3 employees, that's only leaving 5 spaces,
Right?
okay? And one thing that we haven't addressed regarding this application is outdoor dining. And Michelle, our outdoor dining, how does that affect like a small restaurant like this? Because they would be able to take advantage of those regulations for possible outdoor dining, correct?
They would be, but they do have a parking requirement associated with it, so this site may not be able to.
Yeah, we cannot accommodate more than the 8 spaces on Mr. Leonard's site for this particular use. If they have outdoor dining, they'd have to limit it to 16 seats.
I don't even
the
know where you'd
maximum.
put it on that site to be either,
Yeah,
to be honest
it's
with you.
not
That
really
site
set
is
up for
very
that.
tight with building and parking.
Well, and that's, I just want to make sure everything's out there and we're talking about
yeah.
apples to apples.
You would need
and-
to have additional parking with outside dining. Your regulation requires it.
Okay. Could you repeat that?
Your regulation does require to address parking with outside dining.
Okay. So if they wanted to put a picnic table out there, I mean, how would we address that?
Complaint basis. I mean, in seriousness, if they had a small chair outside of the building, we probably wouldn't make them fill out the outside dining paperwork. It's, I'd really have to look at what threshold we have. I think 4 or more tables, I think, is the threshold that we have.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to, cover all our bases because a lot of times those tables end up going in parking places, So I just want your client to know going in that there shouldn't be expectations for outdoor dining.
Yeah, yes, so noted. Just one other point, and that's it. We didn't mention, neglected to mention during my presentation that, we're proposing 8, Michelle and I worked out 8, based on the studies we had, of suburban area, other communities, plus the studies we had Fenwood and our study at DPI. 8, we're saying 8 spaces for maximum 1,600 square foot, 16-seat restaurant. Right now, under your regulations, it'd be 23 more than that. You'd be up to 31 spaces, which doesn't work. So that's why one major reason why we propose this.
I'm familiar with that.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I have a few more things. Just following off of what Steve was saying, Subway is, say, a maximum of 1,600 square feet, correct?
I don't know of any larger than that.
Okay.
1,600 square feet, that's about the maximum Subway you've ever seen?
Excuse me.
I'll repeat what he's saying.
Mr. Leonard, if you're going to be talking, we need you at the microphone.
I'll sign him in.
Okay. And if you could, please
My name's
introduce.
Scott Leonard. I live 110 Lavender Lane, Rocky Hill. I own a couple plazas in town, one Buckland Center and a 1006 Sullivan Avenue. I noted your statement on the picnic tables, so wasn't planning on that anyway. The other question is, I have a Subway in my other location. It's 1,250 square feet. Most of them, they try to stay.
Is that the Sullivan Avenue one?
Sullivan Avenue,
Okay.
yep. That's 1,250 square feet. It seems like Subway tries to keep them very small because their business is leaning that way with all the new way to order food and, over line and over your phone and in and out. And so they're reducing the amount of square foot cost.
You pay rent by the square foot.
It keeps their costs down and they're still doing the numbers because it's in and out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Michelle, offhand, do you know how many square feet like a Shake Shack is?
I don't remember. I think it was like 3,000 though. I think it was a little bit bigger than that, 3,500 maybe.
Yeah, I know, I remember there was a lot of seating
Yeah,
for
there
that
was, and then you had
interior
the outside
and
area as well,
exterior.
so yes, it was
Okay.
bigger facility.
With the number of parking places, and it does seem a little bit tight, just, when I'm looking at it initially, just because I'm thinking also, a place like Subway might have Uber Eats stopping by, or DoorDash. And will there be any, dedicated spaces for pickup and delivery type?
No, there's no dedicated spaces for Uber Eats or Subway app or any of those. They just come running in, running out. And the other thing is Subway's peak hours are the time when surrounding businesses leave to go get lunch somewhere else. So it lightens the parking spaces over there also. So there won't be any dedicated spots.
Yeah. And it is possible, other people in the plaza are coming to Subway to eat lunch, but again, their vehicles are already going to be there, so.
We did the survey in multiple Subways in the area, and the numbers work right across the board on what we're asking for a change.
Okay. Okay. When you gave your previous presentation, you talked about the no oven cooking and all that. I don't see any of that in the text. And I understand, it's really, the small fast food is based on your 1,600 or less square footage. In line with what Steve was saying, I was trying to think of any other restaurants, fast food, even like the bagel place. Any idea how big that one is on Route 5? And of course, they have drive-throughs, Subway won't.
That's a big facility. They have, big production out back there.
Yeah,
Flagship store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
between rounds there, that's pretty big.
okay, just trying to think of
Yeah.
all where,
I think of over in Vernon Center, there's the one, there's a couple-
Jamaican Kitchen or
Yeah,
something?
Jamaican Kitchen, I was thinking that one there, you never see more than 2 or 3 people in there at a given time. That one's probably a small, would fit that, probably 1,000, 1,200 square feet.
When Commissioner Wagner was bringing up the poke bowl, he's right. They come in there to get it and they go. And that works. Those numbers work. If they can make it work in a small space like that and they don't have indoor seating, it's takeout. So he was right. I didn't want to speak up earlier, but I'm up here now.
Okay. Another possible concern that I have is you put Subway on this side, and on the other side of your plaza, all of a sudden you want to put a Jamaican kitchen, any kind of little kitchen similar to a Subway. How is that going to affect your parking?
Well, the whole plaza has a certain amount of parking spaces, and it's regulated by what you have in your plaza. So if you have medical, retail, whatever it may be, each one of those has a certain number of parking spaces that comes off of the top number that you have. So when that was being brought up before, you could actually, if you had the parking spaces, have 2 of those restaurants in there. I cannot. There's not enough in there for me. I have, I think it's 89 or 90 parking spaces over there. And with the retail in there, it, whittles it down to, we got to make it work.
If it may, just for your edification, with respect to his site, although this is townwide we're talking about.
Right.
His site is on septic system, even though the sewer is right next to him on Manchester and right next to him in South Windsor, is unable to connect. As a consequence, he's on a septic system. We went through a B100A application with the town health department, and we received approval for that for the one restaurant, like a Subway. And they reviewed that and they approved that. We're not approved for a second.
Okay, and my last point, this being a restaurant, there's going to be food waste left over. Does that require a separate dumpster or anything else, or more pickups? How often, is it like a community pickup for your trash right now, or what's,
Well, the more tenants we have in, the more we have to have service per day on our trash removal. So it doesn't matter whether it's retail or whether it's restaurant, the dumpster has to be emptied on a regular basis. And if whatever the tenant may be, we might have to step it up another day in the week. Instead of one day a week, it'd be twice a week, which is not a problem with the trash company. They be smiling all day.
okay, because you understand we didn't have really odors possibilities when you were approved under retail versus restaurant.
I understand that.
Okay.
There's no neighbors in the area anyway, but I agree with you. I don't want.
Well,
I built a nice
sometimes it's
plaza. I
not
don't
just
want
the
any smell.
neighbors, it's the other businesses too, if, you know, trash is piling up or anything else.
100%.
Okay, when this came through, I thought we were just addressing really the small fast food restaurants. But now I see all restaurants, taverns, cocktail lounges, and, you know, cutting the required parking down. I mean, it was one space per 50 square feet previously, and now the suggestion is to go to one space per 75 square feet. And just looking at that, I don't know if I've looked at how it would affect the town-wide versus like just this plaza.
Well, in my plaza, that's not even a shot at it. The only thing that could work in mine would be like a Subway-style restaurant. The other stuff is, while we were studying this, the town and design professionals started looking at surrounding towns, surrounding communities to see if we're in line with them. And
Yep.
it
I
was
just
out of
want to make
line,
sure,
it's missing.
I just want to make sure that the commission is aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, that we're talking about lowering the parking standard everywhere for restaurants in the town of South Windsor. So that includes Evergreen Walk, that includes any,
Just, Evergreen Walk came in under a big shopping center one. So, you know, where you'll see it is on the individual site plans. So some of the larger ones don't do the individual breakdown. Scott's project's small enough that he still has individual retail breakdown, restaurant breakdown. Something like Evergreen Walk does not. They have a big parking number based on.
okay, so our restaurants on Route 5,
Yeah, so anything that's a single restaurant out there would be where it would be
Sullivan
impacted.
Avenue,
Correct, yep.
Mexicali, places like that.
You know, if you're not comfortable addressing that with this text amendment, that certainly can be something that you don't choose to act on, and we can look at it further, do more study of it.
Well, one of the issues, and I just said Mexicali, when I go there sometimes, you know, that parking lot might be half empty, but I go there sometimes, and there's a heck of a lot of business there. And I'm remembering like pre-pandemic, not as much as now, but I just have some concerns that it might be a little bit drastic, but if none of the other commissioners have those concerns, then we'll move forward. Commissioner LeBlanc.
Yeah, I just listened to what you're saying, Bart, and I have to, almost going back to my original story about the service plaza. And one of the issues I have with going town-wide with this is that, yes, some of these parking lots are excessive. I'll use the Geisler's as it is today. It's a monstrous parking lot that serves no purpose. However, from a development standpoint, the less you have to pave and the less drainage you put in, it's cost effective for development. And one of the issues with building some of these restaurants and/or plazas or whatever it is and reduce the parking space is a change in tenant. I mean, some of these intentions are good with all this, but a tenant today may become something else 10 years from now. You may be shortchanged. And the whole story about the 995 Service Plaza was that there's 9 tenants in the building, and there's simply not enough parking for them. And that was not what the intent was with that, but that's what happened. So town-wide, I don't think it's a good idea unless we really look at this and think about it. To serve Subway, I'm all for it. You came before us before, and I think it's a good idea. But we need to look at this from a whole town-wide standpoint because the ripple effect of this goes a long way. All right, that's all I have.
We would very much appreciate approving what we're looking for. And I think even the shopping center definition you don't have, I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the going from 50, one space for every 50 square feet gross floor area for restaurant to 75, if you need to, I would encourage you, even if you don't approve that this time, to still keep it on your agenda so you still look at it, because when Michelle and I were looking at it, today, right now, 20 spaces for every 1,000 square feet is very excessive when we're looking at the whole region.
Yeah.
So I don't think you should take it off your docket, that part of it. But we'd appreciate it for the other one so we can get going with the tenancy. That
Yeah.
will finish filling up his building.
I can appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'd like to see the townwide change considered separately. Take it out of this. The other thing, though, I mean, my experience with going to Subways is usually I'm not going there in town, but I'm on the road somewhere. I'm going to whatever. And I really like the idea of being able to sit outside and eat my sub. So I don't know if there's any way to work it would be on the sidewalk. I don't know how much sidewalk you have. I haven't looked at your site plan in a long time, but, a couple small tables out in front of the restaurant where you could pick up your sandwich and go sit outside on a spring day. To me, that's an improvement of life for the customer. So I wouldn't want to rule out a small amount of sidewalk dining that doesn't take away parking spaces and does just add to the pleasure of the experience of going to that restaurant. So,
If you were to do that, you might want to consider that still the total number of seating, whether it's inside or outside, does not exceed what we're proposing.
okay. So, I mean, if you took your Subway restaurant you're thinking of, I don't know how many seats you're thinking of, but is it going to have enough to have, 4 or 6 seats at little tables on the sidewalk, or,
I agree with you. I would like to sit outside and take my time and eat my lunch also, but we have to make this plaza work. And I would love to put a couple tables out there, but what we're proposing and the amount of parking I have, I think we're right where we need to be. So I'm gonna probably stay away from the tables, and I'm with you. I'd rather sit down and have my lunch outside, take my time.
I mean, again, I'm thinking of tables on the sidewalk that maybe make the sidewalk a little narrower where people have to walk, but on the other hand, they give you that experience. So I wouldn't want to rule that out. Just make sure it works with all the other considerations.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, is there anything else?
Chairman, I agree with you.
Commissioner Carey?
I agree with you that, I think it's two different things, talking about this one place versus doing something
Well,
townwide.
it's really talking about small fast food
Right.
versus parking for restaurants townwide. That's really the two things that we're looking at, and we're talking about splitting them and possibly moving forward tonight. For tonight. Yeah, okay. Anything else, commissioners? Town staff? Applicant?
We're good.
Thank
Okay.
you, commissioners. Thank you, Michelle, as always.
Thank you. We'll close this public hearing at 8:10 PM, and it's on our agenda to act later tonight. Our next item is application 22-24P, Drake Motor Partners LLC. Do we have someone here to represent the applicant?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for your time. My name is John Hauser. My address is 496 South Broadway, Denver, Colorado. I'll be brief tonight with my presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. I think the text amendment that's before you is pretty self-explanatory. To paraphrase that, we were asking for the right to sell electric vehicles, the right to service electric vehicles, the right to charge electric vehicles, the sale of solar products, sale of batteries, sale of energy products, and related office space. So that's what's before you. Kind of to give you a little more background on that, the company that's looking at going forward with this project in South Windsor is Tesla Automotive, which you probably already have been aware of, and we have some pictures we can pull up in a moment. And, you know, just a little bit about this company, you know, they're very dynamic, very innovative, very much into green energy. They hold hundreds of patents in dozens of different industries, and they're doing some very interesting things with not only their electric car company, but their battery company, their solar company. You know, they're combining these industries where on warm, sunny days, your solar panels will collect a lot of energy, and that can be stored in a battery that's mounted in your garage. That battery can then cool your home in the evening or charge the battery in your car. And, you know, that's just a kind of a small example of what this company's doing and where it's going. You know, green energy and kind of tech retail are kind of coming together in a lot of ways, and the retailing industry is really changing. I mean, everything from, you're going to see stores that are dedicated to electric bikes, just, you know, e-bikes, to robots, to all sorts of different technologies coming together with clean energy and retailing. The reason Tesla wants to be in South Windsor is, you know, this is a very regional draw for them. It's a very dynamic area. Evergreen Walk specifically has created an atmosphere for attracting customers. And Tesla likes to be, you know, in these hubs, and they like to be around great names like Whole Foods, the Apple Store, Nike, Shake Shack. You know, that's important to them, and they want to associate with those types of brands. You know, again, I mentioned the changing trends in retail, including automotive industry, is a lot of it is designed around showrooms now, showrooms and education, because lots of things are happening online with all different industries. I'm not just talking automotive, but it's important to have showrooms. I noticed there's a Sleep Number bed in Evergreen Walk, and, you know, there's a perfect example of a store where you can go in and be educated and have a demonstration, but you don't really ever leave with a bed. So that's maybe an apple and an orange, but I wanted to make that comparison. Tesla does have 2 stores open in the state of Connecticut right now. They have one in Milford and one in Greenwich. Those are called gallery stores, and again, they're for educational purposes, informing the customer of what they do, and doing demonstration drives in some cases. And I guess before I conclude, I'd like to mention I'm aware of the town attorney and his opinion of this text amendment, and I can tell you that, you know, clearly Tesla is not allowed to sell cars in the state of Connecticut. There's dealership laws in place. They fight this battle in a handful of states across the country, but they are allowed to lease cars, and they are allowed to service cars, and they are allowed to sell cars. So, you know, the attorney's opinion, he made 2 points, and the first one is, you know, it would be confusing, in his opinion, to allow, through a text amendment, the right to sell automobiles when it's not allowed in the state law. So I'm happy to change that language to where any sale of any electric vehicle would be subject to the changing of state laws. However you want to write it. It's obvious to me that, of course, they're not going to sell cars when it's illegal to sell cars. And they may never be able to sell cars in Connecticut. So, you know, Plan A for me would be to amend the language to state, to give the comfort to the commissioners and to the town that we aren't trying to go around state laws. Plan B would be, we can take the sale of cars out of the text amendment. The reason we're trying to get it approved now is because I don't want to have to come back here when and if the state laws ever do change. So it's a convenience for Tesla to have this approved now, but if it's going to create that much of a controversy, we can take the selling of automobiles out of the text amendment. I would prefer to modify the language to just acknowledge the state laws obviously prevail. The second point about discriminatory, I guess the discriminatory image of, or I don't even know what he's getting at, but somehow to conclude that the sale of electric cars is discriminatory against gasoline-powered cars is something I just disagree with. And there are two different product types. Electric vehicles have different operating systems. They have no emissions. They don't use fossil fuel. You know, I don't believe it's to be discriminatory to choose to sell electric vehicles and green energy products as opposed to, you know, that's being discriminatory against all automotives. You know, it's kind of like, you know, in the new Whole Foods that's going to be built, they're not going to sell Lucky Charms. And it's not discriminatory against General Mills. It's just that they're a natural grocer and they won't sell products that their company doesn't support. And, you know, that's what we're getting at here. So that's kind of my pitch, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. When it's time for the commissioners to speak, then they will direct questions at you. So at this time, I'm going to turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Leip. And as part of your report, Michelle, will you be touching on the letter from the attorney?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Because I think it is important. I got the letter. I asked for an opinion from the attorney, just so we knew where we are. So that will be discussed. So I'll turn to Michelle.
Okay, so I'll start with my planning report first.
Sure, thank you.
So this is a request for a zoning text amendment to add permitted use sections to the Buckland Gateway Zone to allow for the sale of new and pre-owned automobiles, including servicing, to modify prohibited uses section to allow for the sale and service of new and used vehicles that are electric, and to add site appearance requirements to 4.291 to display up to 50% of the site for new used vehicles. Currently, automobile dealerships are prohibited in the Buckland Gateway Zone regulations. They are permitted only in our general commercial zone by special exception, and they're subject to the standards of section 7.9, which are basically the distance from the roadway and display of vehicles, those kinds of standards. As stated in the proposed text, the request would add the sale of new and pre-owned automobiles, including maintenance of such, as well as sale of energy products, solar products, and batteries. Sale of these vehicles would be limited to new and used vehicles that are exclusively electric, do not have fuel tanks, do not use oil, and do not have combustion engines. The applicant's requesting to allow up to 50% of the parking stalls on any given site be allowed to be used for potential sale, and that would be subject to review of additional landscaping and decorative through a site plan review process. The business development section of the town plan has one of its goals to attract additional business developments consistent with the character and scale of its surroundings, with a strategy to maintain current business zones with updates. Staff's primary concern with the dedication of 50% of the site to display is there's still adequate parking demonstrated for the uses on site, the size of the building, and you know, again, our parking requirements are not going to create a parking problem. Also, the planning and zoning may want to require display areas to be maintained. You may want to talk about current lighting levels be maintained rather than a lot of car lights like to have larger lighting levels. Those are some of the concerns that you might want to address. The commission might consider it by special exception if they want to permit it so that they can put specific criteria as we were talking about at our previous training as far as conditions go. We notified CROG as required to, and I have a CROG report dated July 8th stating that the staff of Regional Planning Commission, the Capital Region Council of Governments, has reviewed the zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or concerns of neighboring towns. This application is to approve. There was a minor text change. There's a reference to city. We would want to reference town. That was just just a minor note. So I also do have, as the chairman indicated, he did ask me to ask the town attorney, specifically the question being under current state law, direct automobile sales, if that would be permitted as proposed in the text amendment. So I'm going to read this and then I will hand, he gave me an excerpt to hand out to you as well. So this is from Richard Crowler, our town attorney. He says, Michelle, under current state law, the state does not allow for the direct sale of automobiles to consumers by the manufacturer. Where the manufacturer, example given Ford, Chevrolet, Nissan, Honda, etc., must sell its vehicles to local dealership within the state. Only dealerships are licensed by the DMV to sell automobiles to consumers in Connecticut, and dealerships have many regulations related to consumer protection, vehicle repairs, and overall business operations, including taxation. The concept of direct auto sales to consumers has both its supporters and opponents. However, despite several proposals before the state legislature over the past several years, there's currently no law which allows manufacturers to sell their vehicles directly to consumers in Connecticut. The most recent proposal, Senate Bill 214, was not passed during the past legislative session. See attached summary of SB 214. So to directly answer the question, is there currently a state law that would prohibit Tesla from operating a facility as described in the text? The answer is yes. Under current state law, direct automobile sales and manufacture to consumer is not permitted. Under current state law, while the licensure of automobile dealership, repair and service facilities, and gasoline stations are regulated by Department of Motor Vehicles, local zoning boards of appeals regulate the locations of such facilities. As a result, there are no local zoning regulations which are necessary to regulate the location in any zone of such uses. Local zoning regulations may prohibit such uses in particular zones, as you've done in the Buckland Gateway Zone, and may impose conditions on such locations, separating distance locations relative to other uses like residential, buffering, etc. However, the current zone text proposal to allow certain types of auto sales would attempt to allow the approval at the local level of a use over which the state has jurisdiction. Also, if adopted, that would discriminate between electric vehicles and non-electric vehicles in the application of zoning laws by allowing electric vehicle sales while prohibiting non-electric vehicle sales within the same zone. Until such a time as state law allows the direct automobile sales to consumers or a manufacturer chooses to adhere to the current model of sales under Connecticut's dealership franchise systems of laws and regulations, proposed changes to the local zoning code would only serve to bring confusion and possible litigation such as East Hartford situation, and I caution against approving this proposal for those reasons. So I will hand out, there's a copy and also the expert of the bill SB 214.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was actually having trouble understanding because of the acoustics here, so I would like to have a little time to read that myself before we move on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. At this time, I'd like to take a 5-minute break so the commissioners are able to read this and we don't have a lot of dead air. So it's 8:24 right now. We will temporarily adjourn until 8:30. Okay. It is 8:30. I just want to reiterate what Michelle said. This was SB 214, which was proposed but not made into law. So it is just what direction they were moving in, but it did not happen before the end of the legislative session. Michelle, in reading the opinion from the lawyer, the second paragraph down, I just want to ask you, where it regards the local zoning board of appeal regulating the location of dealerships selling cars. Now, the planning and zoning has long held that no car dealerships in the Gateway Development Zone. With that in place, if the responsibility for locating such facilities is the local ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals.
It's really the licensing of them. When it goes in front of the zoning board of appeals for the general, either general repairs or a new license, they look for the zoning, being the planning and zoning approval for that use as part of their review process. So it doesn't exempt your zoning regulations and where you permit general repairs to occur or car sales to occur. Basically, as part of the Zoning Board of Appeals review, they get a copy of the approval letter of the planning and zoning approval for that use.
Okay.
And the statute's kind of funny with giving the Zoning Board of Appeals that authority. Some places, depending on the population of your community, it's the planning and zoning that has the authority. It's kind of gone back and forth over the years. Typically, our Zoning Board of Appeals just reviews what you have done and sends it on to the state.
Okay. Okay, does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to turn to the public. Do we have any letters to read into the record?
We do. And now that I've been shuffling papers, okay, here we go.
Oh, okay.
So the first letter is from the Connecticut Automotive Dealers Association regarding this application to Chairman Pesiconis and Commissioners. I write on behalf of the Connecticut Automotive Retailers Association, CARA, to object to the above referenced application 2224P by Drake Motors LLC. CARA has good cause to believe this application is sought as a precursor to bringing a Tesla car dealership to South Windsor to engage in activity that would violate Connecticut statutory law. The Planning and Zoning Commission must not approve text amendments to its regulations that would thereafter be exploited to try to operate a business in a manner that would be contrary to state law. The application in question, application 22-24, is nominally presented on behalf of Drake Motor Partners CT LLC. The purpose of the proposed project is now listed as electric vehicle sales and service. The person identified for context related to the application is John Hauser, Drake Real Estate, 496 South Broadway, Denver, Colorado, 80209. Mr. Hauser, acting through his Drake Real Estate business, is well known to be a partner in projects of this nature with Tesla Incorporated. To date, Mr. Hauser and Drake Real Estate have been mentioned in various media accounts as being linked to Tesla's efforts to operate dealerships in Washington, Colorado, Kentucky, Utah, and Tennessee. See tabs A through E. Drake's website apparently publicizes its status as a preferred developer for Texas. See tab F. Unlike Connecticut, the laws in other states permit automobile manufacturers, which Tesla is, to sell their vehicles directly to the public. That approach, however, is not permitted in Connecticut. to approve this application as the first step to opening of a Tesla dealership in South Windsor for electric vehicle sales and service would work to violate Connecticut law. Connecticut requires motor vehicles to be sold through dealers. Direct sales by, manufacturers is not permitted. Section 14-52A of the Connecticut General Statutes provides in a relevant part, no person, firm, or corporation may engage in the business of buying, selling, offering for sale, or brokerage of any motor vehicle or the repairing of any motor vehicle without having been issued either a new car dealer's, a used car dealer's, a repairer's, or a limited repairer's license. Connecticut law likewise makes clear that manufacturers may not obtain such a license to sell vehicles. See Connecticut General Statute 1452BB. In seeking to add a permitted use to the Vulcan Road Gateway Development Zone for the sale of new and pre-owned automobiles, including test drives, parking, delivery, and storage of new and pre-owned automobiles, the application by Drake Motor Partners, Connecticut LLC, would invite a plain violation of Connecticut law when no such business operated by a manufacturer such as Tesla would be legal. The Commission must not authorize changes to its governing provisions that would be used to cover to violate state statute. This Commission should be aware that a Tesla location in Greenwich was the subject of a DMV Administrative and Superior Court litigation in Tesla Inc. versus Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles, and it gives a bunch of reference numbers. Both the DMV and the Superior Court determined that the activities of a Tesla gallery in Greenwich was illegal and in violation of Section 14-52. See the same tab G at paragraph 10. Though Tesla had attempted to argue that it was not engaged in selling vehicles, both the DMV and the Superior Court disagreed. As the court explained, if Tesla was not engaged in the business of selling motor vehicles at the gallery, it is difficult to see what was engaged in at that location. The record evidence is that gallery employees educated visitors to the gallery with the goal of selling them Teslas. Same location, paragraph 8. The court noted that Tesla had made available examples of its vehicles, permitted test drives, and allowed customers to format and save a design of their desired vehicles on the computer terminal at the gallery for subsequent purchase from the customer's personal computer. See the same location, paragraph 8. Such activity, as well as the fact that the location's employees were compensated for sales that took place following customer visits to the gallery, led the court to conclude that such actions amounted to selling and offering for sale, which is prohibited in Connecticut by a non-licensed entity such as a manufacturer. In regard to the matter before this commission, the application by Drake Motor Partners LLC leaves no doubt that it asks for this commission to authorize the sale of motor vehicles, including test drives, delivery of the vehicles, and other conduct related to selling cars. If carried on by a manufacturer like Tesla, such activity is expressly prohibited by Connecticut law. And he references the statute. Kara believes that though this effort brought in the name of Drake Motors Partners CTLLC, Tesla is seeking to proceed even further than it did with its improper gallery model at issue in that prior litigation. Such direct sales would constitute a violation of Section 14-52. Kara is concerned that the amendments proposed in this application to South Windsor zoning requirements are a first step to actions that would violate Connecticut's requirement that motor vehicle sales occur through licensed dealers, not directly from manufacturers. Mr. Hauser should be pressed to identify the party for which he is seeking amendments to this proposed application, the amendments requested in this application. What entity would he propose to be permitted to sell new and pre-owned automobiles? What entity is going to engage in the electric vehicle sales and service contemplated by the application? Is that entity licensed by DMV to sell new motor vehicles? or is the entity a manufacturer that does not hold the required license. Given his multiple ties to Tesla elsewhere and his prior application before this commission that expressly mentioned Tesla, Kara is confident that the party behind Mr. Hauser's application is Tesla. Should this commission approve the application by Drake Motors LLC, Kara fears that such a change will open the door to unlicensed manufacturer unlawfully selling vehicles in South Windsor. Because such activity would be contrary to Connecticut law, the zoning enforcement officer would then be obligated to take action. See Connecticut General Statute 8-12, authorizing any official with jurisdiction to prevent any illegal act, conduct, business, or use in or about such premises. Kara submits that the commission should be wary of amending its regulations in a manner that would permit conduct that the state legislature has long forbidden. Kara hereby respectfully opposes any action by the South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission that could serve to be a first step in planned use of the property in South Windsor that would violate applicable laws and regulations of the state of Connecticut for the sales and service of motor vehicles. And he includes a number of articles from other sites around the country. So now I have a letter. Let's see, am I out of order here? Why don't I take your stack, even though mine got out of order? So this is a letter from Lisa Rosati. Dear Planning and Zoning Boarding Member Stephanie Dexter, I read that there is a hearing on 7/26/22 regarding the Buckland Road Gateway Zone text amendment allowing electric car dealerships to sell new and used electric cars on Buckland Road. My husband and I have lived in South Windsor the majority of our life, and we do not support any dealership to be built on Buckland Road. I am not sure why this is even being discussed, as my understanding is that it is currently illegal for an automaker to sell directly to consumers in this state. Regardless, we do not support this. Thank you. Sincerely, Lisa Rosati, Robert Rosati of 10 Devonshire Road in South Windsor. And this is a letter from Tim Shepard. I do not believe the P&Z should change its policy regarding car dealerships in the Buckland zone solely because of electric cars. If vehicle sales are not the type of business you want in that area, it doesn't matter what the propulsion is. Tim Shepard. And I think this is the last letter. Comments I write concerning application 22-24P to modify the Buckland Gateway Zone to allow electric vehicle sales. I'm against making an exception to the regulations for electric vehicle sales. Electric vehicle dealerships, parentheses Tesla, are no different than any other car dealerships, a big box building with no architectural style, surrounded by acres of pavement and cars. If you make an exception for this applicant, you are opening Pandora's box. Are you opening Pandora's box? How will you deal with others that want to locate on Buckland Road? Car dealerships like to group together, so will the entry to South Windsor become like Route 5 in East Windsor, with car lots lining both sides of the roads? Not an attractive gateway to South Windsor. And again, that's from Christine McCann. I don't think I have any other letters.
That's it. Okay.
I found mine now.
So at this time, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward.
Good evening, all. Good evening, Michelle. My name is Bob Seelig. I live at 112 Pheasant Way here in South Windsor. So I'm here before you speaking, kind of wearing two hats. One is a resident of South Windsor, and the other one as a franchise new car dealer selling Ford automobiles in Windsor, Connecticut for the last 45 years. So the good news is I couldn't have said anything better than everyone did previously, the lawyer, the people who submitted the letters. So as a franchise car dealer, the thing I don't think anybody's talked about in what I've heard this evening and some of the past stuff is that by allowing the manufacturers to bypass the franchise car dealerships, what they're doing is they're putting a hurt ultimately on the consumers, the people who purchase the cars. So one of my points is that the franchise new car business has been around for as long as they've been selling automobiles, right? Ford Motor Company, Chrysler, whoever it was that came along, they used franchise dealers because they didn't want to lay out the money, because they didn't understand local regulations, local geography, things like that. In other words, when people have their cars serviced. So what they're ultimately doing is they're going to hurt the consumer. And my point is that actually all over the world, the franchise new car business is the same. People go in, they look at a Ford in Windsor, then East Hartford, Glastonbury, all these different towns. They make comparisons, and they ultimately make a decision to purchase a car, right? Everybody knows that the window sticker on a new car is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. And then from there, it's open to negotiation. It's always been open to negotiation. And another thing that I think that makes the automobile business unique or different than pretty much anything else I can think of is the fact that you trade in cars, right? You horse trade. It goes back, the same system goes back to all modes of transportation. So, and my point is that people don't take their refrigerator, right, and drag it down to Sears or P.C. Richards and Son and say, okay, you're asking $1,200 for your refrigerator. I'd like to give you $900, and what do you give me for this model here? It's, in other words, the automobile business is a unique business, and the thing is, the franchise dealer is the mediator, if you want to call it that, between the consumer and the manufacturer, right? When you buy a car from myself, anyone, any kind of dealership, you establish a relationship with that dealership, right? You get a warranty from the manufacturer, but you go to the franchise dealer to have the car serviced, whether it's routine service or whether it's having the car repaired under warranty. What companies like, I guess we'll say Tesla, but also on the used car end of things is companies like Carvana and Vroom and a lot of these companies that are already in the process of selling cars to consumers over the internet. If you just Google Carvana issues, problems, they've got litigation and lawsuits going in several states around the country. They can't, in most cases, it revolves around Department of Motor Vehicle regulations, registrations. They didn't properly pay off loans that people have on cars that they turn in and trade into a car.
Okay, if we could focus on the issue at hand rather than...
The issue at hand is everything that everyone previously discussed, right? That your lawyer said was against the law in the state of Connecticut. I guess I'm just trying to nail it home a little bit and explain to you that the reason there are lemon laws, the reason that there are regulations, the reason that's a Department of Motor Vehicles and inspectors and everything is in the area of protecting consumers. And by allowing a manufacturer to sell direct to the consumer, what do you do when you go to sue that manufacturer under a lemon law? Where is that lemon law? You sue them federally? There's a reason why there's 50 states in the country and there's 50 different Department of Motor Vehicles in all 50 of those states, right? If it was as easy as regulating it all over the country, you'd buy a car, a title would be issued for that car, and you would never have to issue another title for the rest of that car's life. It would go from state to state to state back and forth. The reason that you have to do all of this stuff when you move into a new state is so that you can be watched and you can be regulated on it. And you know, that's my car dealer hat. As far as being a resident of the town of South Windsor, it's the same stuff that was stated in these letters. You all designed that gateway to be what it is. And I remember when it started. I've been living in this town for about 25 years, and it got off to a slow start because of a downturn in the economy at that point. But now we are, how long, 20 years later or so? The place is catching traction. You've built the apartments in the back. People are starting to shop. People are going. I grew up in the town of Windsor, right? And the town of Windsor had a beautiful center, a nice town hall, a green, all these nice little things, right? I've been living in South Windsor for 25 years. There really was no, I don't know where the town green is. I don't know where the center, now I do. It happens on Buckland Road, you know. Everything that's going on from the medical field, it's all great. There's no possible way an automobile dealership belongs in that area. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. My name's Terrell Dabrowski, South Windsor resident, 74 Windy Hill Drive. I'm also the sales director for the Hoffman Auto Group in East Hartford, Connecticut. And I want to thank all of you for, listening to us this evening. We really appreciate it. It means a lot. I just have some bullet points here that I want to just kind of walk through quickly. One is, the Hoffman Auto Group, we're committed to defending the dealer franchise system because it provides the consumer with benefits and protections. We're licensed, regulated, and directly responsible to the state of Connecticut for customer satisfaction, which is extremely important. Another bullet point, the dealer franchise system keeps prices low by fostering fair and healthy competition on a level playing field. Direct sales by manufacturers is not necessary for the rapid introduction of EVs in the state of Connecticut. Direct sale EVs like Tesla are expensive luxury vehicles, and they're a very small percentage of the vehicles sold. Franchise dealers like the Hoffman Auto Group supports carbon reduction and offers a robust selections of world-class hybrid and plug-in EV vehicles. When you buy a Ford Mustang, a Nissan Leaf, and an Audi e-tron, a Porsche Taycan, or any other of the EV hybrid models that are offered in the state of Connecticut by franchise dealers, you also buy it from the local business. Someone who's going to stand behind the product, be responsible to service those products and give the customer the experience they deserve. We also employ 25,000 people in the state of Connecticut automotively, which is huge. Those are our neighbors, family, friends, so on and so forth. So that being said, I don't want to be redundant. Clearly, I think the attorney summed it up very well in the letter. I know Bob made some very good points, but really that's our concern. We're definitely pro-EV. We think it's great for the environment. It's just, should be done the right way, and there's laws in place to protect our consumers so they do have a voice and they are taken care of when there are issues. Currently, with this current model of Tesla, when you do have an issue, I don't know if anyone knows anyone who owns Teslas, but when you have an issue, there's an email address that you can email someone in California. So clearly that doesn't provide the type of service and experience that we expect for our friends, families, and coworkers. So, but I want to say thank you. I appreciate everyone this evening for listening to us, taking the time, and really that's all I have. Have a great evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns that they'd like to voice? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Carey.
No comments at this time.
Commissioner Dexter.
Just a couple. Personally, I have no doubt Senate Bill 214 will eventually pass. 20 states in this union of states has already passed a similar bill. New York and Massachusetts already allow direct-to-consumer sales. So 2 out of 3 abutting states do. I totally understand what some of the folks who have come up from franchise dealers have said, and I totally agree, and your customer will continue to go to you. But we're all about choice, okay? So I'm not afraid of a manufacturer to consumer business model, personally. And that's all I'll say right now.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner.
Yeah, I don't know. I also appreciate the whole issue, which is actually a legislative issue about whether or not we allow direct sales from manufacturers. I also agree that this is almost certainly a Tesla proposal here, but nonetheless, this proposed regulation is not specific to any manufacturer. Hyundai could build a store to sell Ioniq 5s or something like that under this regulation. So I've also got my concerns about whether we want to have car dealers in the Buckland Gateway Zone. So I'm thinking that I'm kind of torn between working on crafting a regulation that I could live with if this were to pass, and then not sure that I would vote for it once I'm done crafting that regulation. So, first of all, the permitted uses, that section 425 that's proposed isn't restricted to electric vehicles, and it seems to completely override the prohibited uses that are in the paragraph 426. So I mean, I've got a big problem with paragraph 425F because it just basically opens the door to any kind of a car dealership that anybody could want to provide. Section 426 talks about vehicles, and I looked up, I actually went to Wikipedia, but a vehicle is a very broad definition. We teach bike safety to fourth graders, and a bicycle is a vehicle in our regulations. Boats are vehicles. So the term vehicle should be replaced with the term automobile, which is I think recognized to be a four-wheel passenger vehicle. So we need to talk about automobiles. And then we need to talk about, well, what do we mean by automobile? Well, now the range, if I were to go to one of the Hoffman businesses or Mr. Selig's business and see what's on their lot, that's what electric vehicles are going to look like. There's going to be SUVs, there's going to be minivans, there are going to be pickup trucks, I assume. I think you could probably buy a pickup truck from Bill Selig, Ford, but the point is that we got to define very carefully what it is that we're actually allowing to be sold. So I would say definitely automobiles, and then a few words about just how far we want to go with that. And I think we ought to have words to the effect that by automobile we mean four-wheel passenger vehicles that seat no more than some number of passengers. So, I mean, I think of the bus that the town runs that delivers seniors around to various places. That's a four-wheel vehicle that serves passengers. So we need to limit the size. We need to be clear about whether it includes other kinds of vehicles like pickup trucks. And personally, I can see that there are going to be electric pickup trucks, maybe not by Tesla, but everybody's starting to sell electric pickup trucks. So let's get that clarified. So I understand from the letters why this is not really a dealer. And I know that's a state law issue, so, but right now I think we're not ready for trying to get around that or define that. When this application came in, I happened to be visiting my daughter in Texas, and I took the opportunity to drive to a Tesla dealer outside of San Antonio. like one of the letters mentioned, well, it didn't really look any different than any other car dealer. They had a lot of electric charging stations out front, which, you know, they were using to charge, I guess, the vehicles they were selling, but they also had a lot of outdoor storage, a lot of boxes that I don't know what came in them. Maybe it was batteries, or I don't know what it was, but they had a huge amount of basically shipping materials that were just being stored outside. So I'd want this regulation to deal with outside storage as part of it. If I were to go to this company, dealer, what do you want to call it, and sell my, I don't know, Ford, can't remember what the name, and I bought a number of cars from Bill Sully. If I were to trade in one of their internal combustion engineering cars, is that what's going to be sold on this lot? Or are they going to only sell the used electric vehicles? Because I think that's the wording. So if you would maybe come forward and tell me how you're going to deal with the internal combustion engineering vehicle, engine vehicles that are traded.
Well, to kind of address your three comments so far, we can absolutely change vehicle to automobile, because that was the intent. So appreciate that. I can also qualify that it's electric automobiles only, and I understand the potential conflict in the two different paragraphs that you referenced, and just mistakenly didn't say electric in 4.25F, so we can do that as well. And thirdly, yes, electric automobiles only for if there's a resale. But the bigger question here, and I guess I apologize, in hindsight I would not have done this, we're not going to sell automobiles here because we're not allowed to. It's against the law. And that language in the text amendment was Tesla believes, and other electric vehicle, and just the industry's changing, they believe they're going to get the law changed in the future. But they may never get the law changed. 100 years from now, they may not be able to sell cars here. So all the pushback about selling electric vehicles here this is not the place for that, and I apologize I put it in, because there are a lot of Tesla customers in Hartford right now. Their cars need to be serviced. We are going to open a location here to service those cars. If we can never sell a new car there or a pre-owned car there, then we never will. So, you know, a lot of the resistance here is unnecessary, because that is a different forum. Changing state law is a completely different animal.
So, I mean, I guess I don't like to see people coming back to us over and over again. If the state were to allow, I guess what you're saying is you're not, well, we're not just dealing with Tesla in this regulation.
Correct.
So another company might come in, Bill Selig might want to sell electric cars in our town. They would be using the same regulation. So do we want to take sales out of this or leave it in, but recognize that not everybody can sell?
It would be acceptable to me to do it either way. You can either qualify that it's going to be subject to state laws changing, or simply take it out.
Okay. Now, I know that right now Tesla does not sell pickups, but a number of other companies are bringing pickup trucks to the market, and SUVs and crossovers. So I would want to make sure that whatever version of this we do vote on does deal with all the different things that could happen in 10 years down the road. Because I think the commission has to recognize that if we just approve automobiles today, 5 years down the road, somebody's going to come in and say, well, I really want to sell pickups too, and I'd like to, and we're going to say yes. So I think right now we got to recognize we're going to be selling pickups at this place, as well as, maybe not immediately, but as well as all different varieties of passenger vehicles. So.
And Tesla actually does have a pickup that's not for sale yet, but they're working on one. It's called the Cybertruck. It's on their website, and But I also understand if there's a need to actually define what an automobile is, and I'm happy to use the classic definition of automobile that's been around for as long as automobiles have been around. Our distinction is electric versus, you know, traditional oil and gas cars. But defining what an automobile is, you know, I'm happy to do that. If that helps quantify, because I think commercial fleets and commercial things are for sure different. It's not what we're trying to do here.
Okay. That's basically all the issues I have. I gotta say that personally, I'm very uncomfortable with opening up the idea of a dealership, a car dealership of any kind. We allowed a gas station to be built, and we required it to be, what, 500 feet from Buckland Road or 400 feet, and that's worked out pretty well. But I'm thinking personally, I like the way the Buckland zone is defined, and I'm going to have a hard time approving whatever version of this we have.
If I may, can you pull up the pictures? I did have an example of what we're proposing, okay. Because it's really, yeah, great. The showroom itself, there's really only 2 cars in there. And you can see the graphic wall talking about the solar panels and the batteries. I just want to make it clear that this, again, we won't be selling cars because we're not allowed to. We will be servicing electric cars. We made it, instead of a Tesla store, an industry-wide store for fairness that any company, Ford, Chevy, Mercedes, could open an electric-only car company. Again, that's the distinction. But what Tesla would like to do is open a Tesla store in there because they have a variety of products.
So while she's bringing that up, are you saying that you would not be displaying cars outside?
Well, so what was proposed in the text amendment is that 50% of the existing stalls, and I should add that this building works well for us because it was designed and built as a health club, where health clubs have a lot of parking. So, you know, we are still a car company as our primary use. So that works really well, and so the proposed language was 50% of that could be used for inventory of cars. But Tesla at the moment has no inventory because if you buy a Tesla, you don't go walk the lot and pick one and drive away. It's actually 6 to 9 months before you can even get your hands on it. It has to be made. So I'm not sure what facility you visited in Texas, but they have their sales and service centers. They also have collision centers, and they have multiple different property types. You may have gone to one that isn't a sales and service center. But this building that we built for them outside of Spokane, Washington, is a little bit more representative of their image. You know, it's that kind of more of a, how do I call it, modern, sleek, kind of minimalist type of architecture. Obviously, it's built as green as we can. We'd be renovating this building to try to fit that same image. But we're very flexible on architectural design. The picture I wanted to show was one of the interior ones. How do I? No, well, that, there should be 4. What is the showroom? Well,
that might have been the picture, but it was blown up.
that was the service area, which I'm happy to show that one as well. It's,
If you could reduce the
this one?
size of it, 400%.
This one here, I see.
Yeah, so but that's not even what I was gonna show you. There is a one of,
I thought we'd only gotten two. I apologize. More than two?
In the bottom right there, you can reduce the size of it too, and that'll give us what we're looking at as far as size-wise.
well, I can pass this around. This photo there's a couple cars in there, and those are, again, for educational purposes, demonstration, and with those pictures behind the car are the solar panels, the batteries, there are other products that they offer. And, you know, it's important to know, and I'll keep coming back to this, we're not selling any cars here, and we are a green energy company with batteries, solar panels, and yes, electric vehicles.
So I noticed that one of the pictures shows a row of charging stations. Are those destination charging, or are they level 2, level 1,
So
or
that
level
with-
3?
Yeah, those are the new V3 chargers. They can charge a battery in 20 minutes, you know, from empty to full. Whether those will be here is undetermined. Those are kind of, they're called customer-facing charging stations. And if they don't have any in Hartford right now, they're gonna have them. Those are for customers, and it is a different department that kind of decides where they need to be based on where their customers are and their travel patterns. So sometimes they're within the facility, but a lot of times they're not. They make deals with other retailers and put 7 or 8 charging stations in, you know.
I mean, you have an array of these, maybe a mile or two away in Manchester, on the same side of I-84, so.
Yeah, so if that's the case, then it would be unlikely that they would put them here. They'll have a couple here, obviously, for the cars they service, but they may not have the customer-facing charging stations in this location if they have one close by.
On the other hand, I would like to see, consistent with my membership on the Energy Committee, I would like to see more destination charging in South Windsor. So we can talk about that at some point.
You know, I'm here tonight because there's a lot of Tesla customers already here, and we're trying to figure out a place to service them. This is our first choice, and if this does not make sense for you guys, then, you know, we'll move on to Plan B. And the sale of the cars are a completely different battle.
Section, that's the paragraph 42F. I kind of underemphasized in my mind the second sentence that says maintenance, repair, and charging of new and pre-owned automobiles and the sale of energy products, solar products, battery parts, accessories, and general office. That's what you're talking about, as a general. I mean, if I wanted a battery for my garage to back up my solar system, or to, you know, that would be one of the products you're trying to sell there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously cross-shopping is a huge part of this. So if your Tesla is being serviced, someone may talk to you about, do you have solar panels on your roof? Do you have a battery in your garage? Can we show you how these work together and how this, you know.
Okay. I've taken up enough of everybody's time. Thank you.
All set? Okay. Commissioner Foley.
Yeah, going to the regulations is one thing, but section 4.2 is Buckland Gateway Development Zone. That's the most important part of this conversation right now, is we have this book, and it says in that book that there to be no car dealerships. So I'm gonna just cut to the chase. I'm not against electric vehicles, it's the way of the future, but it's not here.
Yep.
Plan B, I look at the Mestech building on Route 5, whether it be Tesla, Ford, General Motors, whatever. Sit down with the town manager in the town, take a look at that brownfield of a building. You got fuel cells right there. What a great green deal that would be, but not here. So, that's it.
Commissioner LeBlanc.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the gateway zone was developed, I thought about this too, and it's actually in my notes right here. I know Commissioner Foley just spoke to this, but this wasn't part of it. And that gateway zone was developed with a lot of good insight, a lot of good work, and I support it. It's the one part of South Windsor, to me, that makes sense. I don't like Sullivan Avenue, and I certainly don't like Route 5. They're not the prettiest roads to drive on, but Buckland Road today, as it exists and how it's actually proposed through the gateway zone, does make sense to me, and I don't feel like we should change it. What happened on Route 30 between Manchester and Vernon, they get one car dealership, and now there's 15 of them. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's not the nicest drive to go through there. They tend to cluster. Somebody had a letter regarding that. Once you get one, you get 7. People cross the street and they shop dealers. They get a better price, is what happens. I don't think this is the right place for this, and it wasn't the intent of the gateway zone. I'm not in favor of that. However, other parts of town, I'm open for discussion. Route 5, certainly, Sullivan Avenue. However, that said, looking back at these letters that came in regarding legislation and all that, that's something for the lawyers to be sorted out, and I'm staying out of that, but it looks to me like this is a little preliminary, but thank you.
Commissioner Cavagnaro.
Thank you. I do have a couple of quick questions. I do want to start off by asking first. I assume you are aware of the layout of a typical Tesla, I'm just going to call it a shop, to be very, very broad. Something like that, for example. I assume you're aware of the layout, like say, you know, how many employees, types of titles, exactly what they do. You are aware of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to ask about, and again, in my opinion, it's more about trying to verify whether or not sales can actually occur here. I'm not going to make that, you know, judgment yet, because I would like to ask a couple questions. One, the employees at these facilities for Tesla, what types of titles do they hold? Like, what types of tasks do they do on their daily basis?
Well, the guys who service the cars work on them. I guess the common definition would be mechanic. When we're allowed to sell cars, those people, I don't know what their title is, but they're in charge of selling cars, so you might want to call her a salesman. The energy products and the other services that they have are more of a hybrid, and I actually don't know what their titles are, but that's, and then of course there's managers and there's other people working there.
Okay. Like I said, my main concern, I assume there would be some like X amount of mechanics in the back garage. You know, I also saw the picture of the gallery of the cars. I was really looking for like a specific type on the car, like, you know, trying to find stickers on the car that would indicate of some manner that would, you know, trying to locate you to a website to then purchase the car, as mentioned in one of the reports we read, but I didn't see that. And of course, when that state law does pass, then, you know, of course there will be sales associates. I just wasn't sure if there would be people in their offices welcoming people, trying to push them to buy a Tesla. That is really what I was trying to figure out. Other than that, I don't have any other comments at the time.
Okay, Commissioner Quarishi.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to express is the part I'm also stuck on is the Gateway Development Zone opening up to other dealerships. But I have been to a Tesla
If you
store.
could, please move your microphone a little closer and maybe point it at you. Thank you.
Yeah, I have been to a Tesla store, and they were actually selling other products, but there were no cars inside or outside. There was a skeleton car inside, but there was sale of vehicles occurring because it was all electronic and people were doing that. So, you know, that would be the only sticking point. Other than that, I agree with the other commissioners that this could be done anywhere else except for the Gateway Zone.
Okay, thank you. I respect the regulations in the Gateway Development Zone. I think this is a little like putting the cart before the horse. you've got some hurdles with the sale of vehicles. Granted, I understand you're willing to eliminate that from the text amendment, but then there's still the underlying argument of the Gateway Development Zone and it being the type of zone that we've tried to develop over the years. I just have a hard time looking at the language, and I understand Tesla is a quality product and it's the new wave coming forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the development that happens in the next 10, 20, 30 years, because, you know, it's a great time to see what's happening, how everything's advancing, you know, with computers and what they were 10 or 20 years ago. I'm envisioning cars being the same way. And as Commissioner Wagner said, we're looking at not just, you know, cars, trucks. In 10, 20 years, it could be not automobiles, but airplanes or personal planes, stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of technology out there, and there's going to be a lot of changes. But the part that is holding me back on this is the Buckway Gateway Development Zone, and we have made it so we couldn't have car dealerships here. We didn't want those type of activities in the Buckland Gateway Development Zone. We wanted it to be more than just repair shops. We didn't want it to be like our Route 5 or any other street that sells cars, because sometimes it's easy for a developer to go in and just do the quickest thing possible to fill up sites. One of them is retail. Another one is car dealerships. It takes up a lot of room. There's not a great deal of cost initially, because you're putting a building in, but it's got a service department, a sales department, and you know, a lot of outside storage, and that's not what I've seen envisioned for the Gateway Development Zone.
We don't have any outside storage, and all the work is done inside the facility.
I understand what you're saying. Part of that was just going back to what Commissioner Wagner had said when he had gone to a Tesla dealer, I believe it was Texas, and what he saw. So I don't know, but as far as outside storage, in this case, I'm looking at the vehicles as being outside storage. And when I initially heard about this, I thought it might be a decent idea, because I was thinking a couple cars, or, you know, a half a dozen or maybe a dozen cars in the building, and really no vehicles outside. I didn't initially think about the service aspect of it. And granted, a lot of these electric vehicles will be brand new vehicles, but it's not, when we do a text amendment, we're not just doing it for Tesla. We're thinking about it for every possible manufacturer that might want to come into the Gateway Zone or wherever the text amendment is for. So we have to kind of paint it with a broad brush. And once you start having some uses be prevalent, every other dealer, manufacturer is going to want the opportunity to come here too. And I understand what your language was and, putting it strictly to EV, but I think, and I'm not trying to put words into the lawyer's mouth by any means, but it might be looked at as it's unfair treatment for just electric vehicles. And if we have to open it up to all types of vehicles, I just don't, and we've got a lot of the Buckland Gateway Development Zone already developed, but there's a lot of areas on the other side, opposite Evergreen Walk, that haven't been developed yet. And we do have a general plan for one all worked out, but I think it could possibly change the Gateway Development Zone a lot more than what we're looking for. So trying to keep an open mind, but at this time, I'm leaning towards not supporting opening up the Gateway Zone as the text amendment would say. So commissioners, this is a public hearing. Commissioner Wagner?
One more thing. I mean, if you're thinking about going into this wording or whatever other changes you want to make, but taking out the word sales or taking out sales and service, we have to think, 5 years down the road, or when this bill passes, whoever is operating that building will come in and say, well, I want to do sales now because the bill changed. So I think as a commissioner, regardless of what the wording, we could take the word sales out, but I think we got to envision that this is going to turn into sales someday if it doesn't turn into sales immediately. We have to envision what the future holds when people come in with incremental changes and what this is going to look like. And so I'm with Chairman Pasakonis. I'm going to discourage you from continuing to pursue this, at least on my behalf.
I did like Commissioner Foley's suggestion about the old Mestec building area. And I understand what your draw was, Apple, all the other big stores, and Apple's not a big store, but the big name stores, Whole Foods. That is a big draw for Evergreen Walk. We hear it with every type of use that wants to go in there. And I know South Windsor would love to have a Tesla type dealership in town, or other areas of town, and if it's a Selig Ford dealership coming to town, we would tend to look at like Route 5 for something like that versus the Buckland Gateway Zone. So
I appreciate that. When Michelle and I started talking, I was very aware that automobile dealerships were not allowed in this zone district for intentional reasons. And so my hope tonight was you were going to see us as an evolving green energy company with electric vehicles and, no fossil fuels and no carbon footprint and that kind of quasi-retailer, which is why we want to be around Apple and Whole Foods and not Ford and Chevy. And I appreciate the fact that whether I did a poor job of explaining or whether you just don't accept the fact that we're not a traditional car dealership, there's nothing I can do about that. But we're probably not going to an alternative site down the road. We're probably just going to the next town that views us differently. Because we have to be in certain environments. It's important to us.
Right, and if you had come to town and you had started with something like a solar panel company or green energy, that might have been looked at differently. And then, you know, we could possibly craft something as an accessory use. You know, and when the law changed, maybe have accessory use of a dealership or something like that, or sales.
Yeah, but I don't want to mislead either. I mean, our
Right, no,
our
I
core business
understand
is
that.
electric
but
cars.
and what I'm saying is, if there was that clear path first, that eventually, you know, morphed into something afterwards, it might have been easier to put something like that into the Buckland Gateway Zone. So I appreciate you coming down. You know, other commissioners want to speak up or give additional opinions. This is the public hearing. We are getting to a late hour. We have to decide whether we're going to continue this public hearing to another night, or if we've got all the information we need, and if we're going to stay later and take care of some additional business to get it off our plates. So, Commissioner Carey?
I think we should close the public hearing.
Okay. Commissioners, is there any reason to keep this public hearing open? Do we need any additional information?
I'd like to hear from the applicant,
Well, I ask you first.
but not from me.
Yeah. Town staff, any reason to keep the public hearing open?
No.
Okay. Applicant, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? Or do you have,
No,
okay.
thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we will close this public hearing at 9:32 p.m. And I'd ask the commission to extend our meeting until, say, 10 o'clock if needed, 10 p.m. Would somebody put that in the form of a motion?
I'll make a motion, we extend the meeting till 10 PM.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of extending the public meeting, or the meeting until 10 p.m.?
Aye.
Aye.
Say aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. So at this time, we'll go into the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning for the Town of South Windsor for July 26, 2022. Our first item on our agenda is public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on anything that is not on our agenda? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move right into our regular business. Our new business, number one is application 22-20P, the Golden Lampstand temporary and conditional permit. We heard this tonight. It should be fresh in everybody's mind. Commissioners, what is your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to approve application 22-20P, the Golden Lampstead TNC.
And do you have the conditions on the back of your?
Stay tuned, folks.
Just- So you're moving approval of?
It's been a long day.
That's okay.
I'd like to move to approve application 22-20P, standard conditions for temporary and conditional permit.
Number two?
Looks like these are,
What's
I have
that?
to read them all, just italicize one to read? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you might as well read them all. There's not that many.
Okay, all right, yeah, it's kind of short, so. These are the standard conditions for a temporary and conditional permit. One, the temporary and conditional permit will expire on July 26, 2024. It must be renewed prior to that time if the use is to continue. Number 2, all freestanding signs and/or building signs, temporary or permanent, require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. Number 3, if there are buildings, structures, signs, or other items that require a building permit or other town approvals, permits, all such approvals or permits must be obtained prior to construction or use of the site. Number 4, limits of clearing, including removal of any significant trees, shall be shown on the plans. Number 5, the design of driveway cannot be steeper than 15%, and it is suggested to be 10%. Spot grades for the driveway and parking areas shall be shown on the plans. And finally, number 6, any areas disturbed shall be graded and reseeded.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Do we have a second? That was your second? Okay. May I have that back? Commissioners, any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Dexter? Commissioner Carey? Okay. Okay. Commissioner Wagner? Okay. We have a motion and a second. No discussion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to application 22-25P, Miracle World Outreach Ministries for a temporary and conditional permit. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Like to
Move
make a
we
mo-
approve application 22-24, whoops.
Steve? I think Commissioner Cavagnaro started
Oh, okay,
talking
I'm sorry.
first. Commissioner
Thank you.
Cavagnaro?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve application 22-25P, Miracle World Outreach Ministries temporary and conditional permit. It's a request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit, section 2.13.A, to allow a church use with limited hours on property located at 400 Chapel Road, Unit 2A.
Okay,
I
excuse me?
zone. Yep, I was getting to that.
Okay.
And then with the standard conditions for temporary and conditional permit, point 1, the temporary and condition permit will expire on July 26, 2024, and must be renewed prior to that time if the use is to continue. Point 2, all building and fire codes must be complied with. Point 3, if there are buildings, structures, signs, or other items that require a building permit or other town approvals or permits, all such approvals or permits must be obtained prior to construction or use of the site. Point 4, all freestanding signs and/or building signs, temporary or permanent, require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. Point 5, per the fire marshal, the maximum capacity is 49 patrons. Finally, point 6, hours of operation for services are Tuesday and Thursday evenings 6 to 8 p.m., Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and Sunday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner LeBlanc, thank you for that second. Any discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, our next item is application 22-21P, Leonard zoning text amendment. Commissioners, I'll just remind the commission that whoever makes the motion is the person who dictates what is included in that motion. So please look at what it was, remember what we talked about tonight, and what's your pleasure, Commissioner Wagner?
I was thinking that we did discuss some of the changes to the text, and it might be helpful if we waited for the staff to give us a new draft based on what they heard us say and not have a motion tonight.
I think what I heard you say tonight was you want to take out the change that would reduce it to 75 square feet. So there's 2 locations where that was proposed. So we would not propose that change. At this point, we would only be dealing with the restaurant fast food small, right? We would be dealing with that, and then we'd be dealing with the 2 definitions.
And the other thing was that we wanted to be clear about how we combine the parking requirements of the different businesses in a shopping center. If you have a restaurant and a bunch of other businesses, you get a different amount of parking, How do you calculate it?
Well, that's part of the regulations.
Yeah, the regulation tells you how you calculate it. You break it down by use in square footage. So that's already part of the regulation.
Okay, so, all right,
With a bigger development, then,
Shopping center kicks in
Right, it was
with
mostly for
larger,
fast
yeah.
food, right? That was the intent, or the original intent.
Small.
Small fast food, correct.
okay. So are you comfortable making a motion, Steve, or would you rather wait?
I would rather wait,
Okay.
unless someone else wants to make it.
Is there anyone who's comfortable making the motion, or then what we'll do is,
We gotta try for this guy, no?
okay,
So I'm gonna
Commissioner Dexter,
make a motion to approve
if you
application
could maybe move that a little closer.
22-21P, saying that the Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the zone text amendment is in conformance with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development, and the effective date of the zone text change for fast food small only is August 13th, 2022. And Michelle?
What about the definitions?
And the two definitions that were recommended?
Yeah, one was shopping center and the other was the definition of the small fast food.
Restaurant, fast food, small.
Okay, so the definition for shopping center and small fast food restaurants would apply.
Okay,
What about the parking? Some of the parking would be in and some out.
Yeah. You said the small fast food is 1 per 200 square feet of gross floor area, as indicated in the chart that's in
Michelle
front of
said.
you.
Okay,
Second,
thank you.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. I see in blue on our chart, there was modified to relocate it in the parking table. That's,
That was just really for alphabetical. I was just going to put it alphabetically, because it wasn't.
okay. And the other thing is fire marshal and health
And that's
department.
already incorporated into the definition, so we're all set with that.
Okay, great. Is there any other discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we had application 22-24P Drake Motor Partners LLC, Buckland Road Gateway Zone Text Amendment.
so I'm gonna move that we approve application 22-24P to add permitted uses, section 4.2.5F, to allow for the sale of new and pre-owned automobiles, including servicing. Modify prohibited uses, section 4261, to allow for the sales and services of new and used vehicles that are electric, and add the site appearance requirements, section 4291, to allow display up to 50% of the site for new used vehicles. The Planning and Zoning Commission finds the zone text amendment in conformance with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development. Effective date of the zone text change is 8/13/22.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Foley?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I don't find this to be in conformance with the goals of the Buckland Gateway Zone, so I plan to vote against it.
Okay. Commissioner Foley?
Oh, nope.
Oh, okay. Commissioner LeBlanc?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Wagner's sentiments.
Okay. Anyone else?
I
Okay.
agree. I agree that we should not approve it.
Okay. So at this time, a motion's been made, it's been seconded, no further discussion? All those in,
Chair, just for clarification, the motion is to approve that's on the floor, correct?
correct.
Make sure all the commissioners understand where
We
we
had
are.
our meeting with our
Yep.
attorney last week.
Everybody understands that, correct? Okay. So we have a motion to approve, and it's been seconded. There's no further discussion. I'll call the motion. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Hearing none. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Roll call, or we don't need a roll call because it was unanimous. Okay, so the motion is defeated. Okay, bonds, did we have bonds?
No, you don't, but you have one other item
Oh,
here that
okay.
Mr. Demele's patiently
Oh,
waiting for.
determination of permitted use for vertical storage. Okay. I'll turn to our, oh, we have a, I don't want to discourage an applicant from providing us with a thorough application, but the Cliff Notes would be appreciated. This is across from the Amazon project that was built and next to the Coca-Cola facility, roughly. And the power lines are to maybe the north of that?
If we can't get this to work out, I'll ad-lib. They got it in front of them.
Yeah.
Okay? We'll just... no, let's forget the trying. Let's just...
Okay.
Okay, in the pocket. For the record, again, Peter
Focus,
Demele.
everybody. We only have a little while left. Thank you.
Chairman Pasconis, Vice Chairman Foley, and Commissioners, again, for the record, Peter Demele, President of Design Professionals, 21 Jeffrey Drive here in South Windsor. I won't talk too fast, but I'll summarize what we got here. By the way, my client, Scott Spindler's here in the back. We have a site that is right along I-291, as per the exhibit you have. It includes a 4-acre parcel right up opposite Amazon, okay, the Skinnell project. And also behind it, there's 7 acres as well. So 4 acres plus 7, so we get 11 acres. We met with Michelle on the 16th, I think, of June. She was kind enough to meet with us and discuss the project. And then she encouraged us to go meet with the town manager to discuss the project, and we did, and he encouraged us to look at the parcel that the town recently acquired for economic development purposes right behind it, somewhat landlocked. It's got a thin little strip of, I don't know, 12, 15 feet or something to get back there. Anyways, Mr. Spindler is in the business of developing climate-controlled self-storage facilities. These are, I think, appropriate for the site. One reason is because your regulations want a couple of things here. First of all, it's right next to I-291. You want taller buildings. You want them to be higher than the roadway. The roadway is up about 20 feet higher than the ground. So the idea is having a 3 or 4 story building. You allow up to 5 stories, 60 feet, but we're talking 4 stories right now. 4-story building is appropriate there. We have the potential for doing, your regulations state the corridor development zone, you want highest and best use. It's all about economic development and high quality economic development. So the idea is to put up a climate controlled self-storage facility. We're talking about 3 or 4 stories, but Michelle and I were talking with our client, and it looked like it'd be better to go with 4-story buildings. Each one of these buildings costs about $7 million to build. That's 100,000 square feet. It's about just over 700 units that will be in here, self-storage units. About 85% of the business for this is residential customers, people who have a house, apartment, whatever, they need to get some stuff out. The reason they're going with climate controls, climate controls mean heat, air conditioning, and humidity control, is because electronics and garments and things of that nature need it when you're storing it. Otherwise you get musty, moldy, etc. So that's the demand now, is for that. So this would be a 4-story building, 25,000 square foot footprint, and it's about a $7 million project. You will get nothing else that I can think of that could go here that would give that kind of value to the town in terms of grand list and a high-quality building. The building can be exterior, the architecture can work with architects, work with architectural design review, with a commission, with staff, something that's attractive. There is no traffic generated from this. They only need, Scott installs only 12 parking spaces here. You don't need them. The most you'll see probably is 3 customers here at any one time. That's usually April, May, June. You might find 3 people there at a time. They tend to come in their car, their SUV, sometimes a pickup truck, sometimes a small van, very rarely anything larger than that. So there's small units. There's an elevator in the building. It generates no traffic. You won't find the big rigs and all that stuff. You won't find anything like this. So it's very low traffic generator. And the most you'll see there is usually 2 employees at the most, usually between 9 and 5. They might have employees there. Mostly, a lot of it is, besides maintenance, it would be people who are just showing prospective customers units and stuff. They may do that, explain to them about it, but a lot of it's done online. People get access. They have an app, so it's a app-enabled access to their individual units. Each of the units have its own locking mechanism, and you get code and all that stuff, so you can get in. So we'd be taking advantage of the 7 acres the town acquired recently from the state of Connecticut to make this a little bit bigger. We're encouraged to go instead of, they were interested in doing a 100,000 square foot building, and that's $7 million. With the land from the town, we could do, and the question is the market, we could do up to, we think, 3 of them. Right now in our example, we have the rusty colored building, brown rusty, is 100,000 square feet. We'd either do them 2 additional additions of about 100,000 square feet each, or we would separate them out. Structurally, we have to look at that with the architects. It may be that we have to have a separating distance. They'll be standalone buildings. If the market is there, it takes 3 or 4 years typically to fill them up. If the market is there and it's going along fine, then they can start doing the second one before the first one is fully occupied. So that could be potentially, if the market is there for 3 buildings, 100,000 square feet, you got to have, there'd be $21 million worth of development right on this small parcel. The only other thing that could generate anything like that would be hotel, but you're not going to get a hotel here. Across from Amazon, next to Coca-Cola, and down from the Home Depot. You're not going to get that. So we think this is appropriate use. They can have glass in it. For example, we're thinking maybe the northwest corner might be glass. We have it laid out with the 12 parking spaces. Another thing is Scott is amenable to doing irrigation in the front area, which would be visible from Route 30. So that would be, he's willing to do an irrigation system for the front of it. The lowest part of the site would be the front left corner, the southwest corner, which is right in the front on the right. So we have to put our detention in. There's plenty of room to spread it out. There could even be some, potentially some land that's for conservation purposes when they're done. So we don't know if it will support 3. We think it will support 2 buildings, and he's willing to proceed. He has an option on it. The front part, have to still work it out with the town for the 7 acres in the back, which is essentially landlocked, but hopefully it's available, and then they can do more than the 1 building is looking to do. Again, if the market's there and we think it may be there. It's a great location, very accessible location. And one other thing is, again, he only needs 12 park spaces, probably only maybe 3 would be occupied at any time. Your regulations say 1 for every 25 units, which would mean 28 per building. We don't need that. So we'd want to, if you say yes, if you determine tonight, do you think it's a appropriate use, because your regulations are very flexible, commercial use, industrial use, that type of thing. If you agree with us, when we come in, we'll want to have less parking because there's no need for it. So it could be very nicely landscaped, attractive building, work with the architectural design review and the commission on that, and it's a very high value development, $7 million each module to build it, and if we can get up to 3, we're hopeful the market is there, and they'll know it as they're leasing it up. But again, it's 3 to 4 years to lease up the first building. So we're looking for a determination by the commission whether or not you think this is reasonable use. And if you'd like it, and if so, just say yeah, because it says commercial industrial use and stuff. If you say, yeah, this is consistent with that, then we'll come in with a building. And HVAC units screened, and they're going to be higher than I-291. I-291, again, is about 20 feet higher than the site.
Yeah, that was the only concern I had. I've seen these down along Fairfield County. I think there's one right off the highway in Fairfield. And the only concern is these are great developments. They're clean. They seem like they're well run. They're compatible with surrounding areas. The only concern I have would be the height of it. It doesn't tower over everything else. I mean, 4 stories is a figure, but I don't know the exact height you're looking for. I mean, I realize surrounding properties may be the same because of the warehousing that's there, but
The 4 stories
just
is
looking
only
for
48 feet
compatibility.
high. It's only 48 feet high, so it's we're roughly 40 feet the other buildings.
Okay.
We're about that height. And when
So
we
it
were
would-
talking to Michelle,
so it
she
would
thought
blend
going
in
to
and
4
everything.
stories. You concur with that?
Yeah, I do. I think the 3 stories, we're, again, concerned about rooftop units and whatever, so if you go a little bit higher, you're going to not see them from 291. And Amazon across the street is 40 feet, so you are 40
Okay.
feet in that zone.
All right,
for most
thank you.
buildings.
Okay.
And again, what Scott has indicated, he wants to do irrigation in the front and make it nice and green, keep it green. And amenable to a condition of approval if and when we get there.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Michelle, do you have a report?
No, the reason I had Peter come and have you guys make the determination is I've gotten quite an influx of calls for self-storage units, and your regulations are somewhat silent to self-storage units. We have a warehouse and distribution is the closest category that we have. I personally think that this is a good project for the I-291 zone. I think it meets the goals of the I-291 zone. If someone were to do self-storage in the industrial zone, I'd have them come in front of you too, and you might make a different determination based on the requirements of the industrial zone. I don't know, but I think the best, we had Peter come forward because I think it's best for the commission to determine that you think it's appropriate in this zone.
Okay. Commissioners? Put your mic on. Michelle, right now we do have the moratorium on the warehouse and distribution centers. Now, this is definitely not a distribution center, but could it be considered a warehouse or?
I think it's a different animal than the warehouses that you put the distribution, or put your moratorium on.
I think so also, but like you said, the regulations are kind of silent on it.
I wish you would add a use of self-storage into your regulations is what I think you really would want to do, and decide what zones you want to put it in. But again, this is not, the distribution warehousing was the trucking and all the other issues associated with that. This is not the same type of project.
Right. Yeah, I believe it is a totally different animal. Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I have spent a lot of time looking inside these facilities, helping my son move around. He's now located in Korea. So I have to say, the kind of facility you're describing is pretty desirable. I wouldn't mind seeing one here. I just want to make sure that we're not getting, we're not opening the door to the kind of facility where everybody can drive up, and because those get ugly, they get dirty, where you have a separate door for every, and I don't know what the right description is, but I know you're not proposing that. I want to make sure we're not allowing that by what we do. So I kind of like the idea of getting a text amendment in, just to clarify, we're talking about enclosed self-storage as opposed to any old self-storage, because some of them are undesirable and this is highly desirable. So I would like to see it written so that we get what we're looking for here. Climate controlled, they can pick the wording.
Doesn't have a million doors around or anything,
Yeah, right. I mean, it's got probably 1 or 2 truck bays and
Is it possible for us to limit the amount of, say, garage doors?
Yeah, we're going to have either 2 or 4, probably. Excuse me.
Right, and
I'll speak for Mr. Let's see what's coming up. So we're probably just the loading areas will have the overhead, the doors, and they're not big overhead doors.
Right, and
They're only 8 feet high.
I understand that, Peter, but what I'm trying to eliminate is 4 stories of what we have down the road. Okay? So by a text amendment or something that limits the amount of garage doors, that could help us keep away from something like that.
Okay, so we'll have to hold off on surveying, engineering, that type of stuff until we get that stuff done, if you're requiring a text amendment.
You know, I almost think, in my opinion, for this, being this is a 291 overlay zone where you have the permitted uses being those commercial industrial uses that meet the purpose of these goals, I think you could make the determination that you found this to be okay. I guess the text amendment I'm a little concerned about is adding this to the industrial zone, because I'm not sure you really want it in just your straight industrial zone. So I'm not sure a text amendment would get it to where we want to with this particular project.
So what you're looking.
You think there's enough in there in the definition of the I-291 zone that we
Sure.
would not approve a generic
You could approve this
self-storage?
use as proposed, yep.
It also has the higher architectural standard than the industrial zone.
Because it says industrial commercial uses, and, you know, if it's more of a commercial use, in my opinion, than it is an industrial use. So that's why it almost fits better in this overlay zone than it does in your straight industrial zone.
So what we would be doing
To
possibly
determining
is
the use.
determining that it's an acceptable use in the 291
Corridor development zone.
corridor zone.
But you'd want to phrase it something in effect, not put words in your mouth, but it's vertical storage, self-storage, climate controlled.
What's per your request that you
Yeah.
submitted.
Yeah, what we said in the letter, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
and I would advise anybody in the industrial zone that wanted to do this to come in with a text amendment, because your regulations are silent in the industrial zone.
okay. So, then can we do this by a consensus agreement that the commission feels that this is an acceptable use
Per the letter submitted, sure.
per letter submitted? Agreed?
I have a quick
Agreed?
question.
Commissioner Cavagnaro?
Because the time is after 10 o'clock, do we have to extend the time first and then do a consensus, or would that just consensus be like,
You-
no?
Would you like to extend the meeting?
Yes. I would like to make a motion, we extend the meeting till 10:10 p.m.
Okay, we have motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Carey seconds. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so it's the consensus of the commission that this is an acceptable use per the letter that we received from,
And that will be reflected in the minutes.
okay,
Okay, so we can go forward. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yep. Our next thing is calling bonds, or bonds, no bonds, okay. We have minutes. We had 2 minutes, the June meeting, and we had the July 12th. I have some changes for the July 12th that I'm gonna give. The way the minutes are, and maybe the approval letter would state it better, but I'm going to ask Michelle to go over with our recording secretary just my changes, and maybe we'll approve them next time, but could we have a motion to approve the June minutes as
So
provided?
moved. So moved.
June 28th?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All those in favor of approving the June 28th minutes as provided, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Michelle, any other business in the next couple minutes? Or?
No, I do not have anything else for you tonight.
Okay. Having no other business, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Carey, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody.